Know now that it is the year 10,191, and the known Imperium is ruled by the Persian Emperor Shaddam IV. And the most important commodity in the Imperium is the spice melange. It is known to be found only on one planet, a world dry and arid, ruled by vast deserts. Many know it as the world Arrakis. But to those who live on this world, it is known as Dune. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, geeks, nerds, ambassadors everywhere, and welcome to the Ambassadorial Wing. And if this is your first time to the Ambassadorial Wing, thank you for being here tonight for this Ambassadorial review for one of what has been a long anticipated movie for yours truly, the Ambassador. I have literally been waiting 2 years for this movie to be released. And I went to see Denis Villeneuve's Dune the other night at our local IMAX, and I was presented with a stunning visual experience and a story, while well known, has been given, in my opinion, its proper adaptation. And this evening, we will be breaking down the movie, giving our thoughts, giving our hopes for what the potential future for the Dune franchise could be. But I will not be doing this alone. I have with me tonight a pair of fellow ambassadors, one who is a longtime alum and one who has been somewhat absent, but no less missed. You know them, and you love them, and they have been long supporters of this channel, have been a part of it since I have been a part of the internet. With me tonight, we have the one and the only MB Grandpa Geek. Grandpa, good to see you.
Dude,
Yeah.
you
And
gotta start this off because this was
I will.
I know you saw my review on my channel. So
Yeah.
you start off, bud, because this
Well,
was...
before we start this, we do have one other panelist with us tonight.
Oh, awesome.
And it has been a very long time since I've seen this face, but he is rather catty, but in all the right ways. And it is good to have him back on the Ambassadorial Wing once again. The one and only Netcat. Netcat, it has been a while,
How
man.
are you doing, buddy?
How you doing?
I'm
been
doing pretty good. Yeah, I remember that one of the first times that I ever did anything on YouTube was actually talking with you guys about Dune.
I remember very vividly. I remember those streams very well. And I do want to send a shout out to the chat. Hayden, Nate, it is good to see you as always. Thank you for being here tonight. And I do hope you enjoy the stream. So, and whether you're watching on YouTube, on Facebook, or on Twitter, thank you all for being here this evening. Enjoy the stream, and I hope you all enjoy the discussion. By all means, make sure you participate in the stream tonight. I have included the link if you want to jump on and be a part of the panel, or if you want to simply participate through the chat, by all means, do so. And also, real quick, before we do get into this, Jackie Chandorel. But Jackie, good to see you, man, and hope you're having a good weekend. I know you probably are going to get ready to head to work, so be safe and have a good night. And yes, I hope this stream, this discussion will be interesting for all. But yeah, it's... As I said, I went to see Dune the other night at our IMAX, and it was an experience, and it was a very enrapturing, enthralling, no pun intended, experience.
You used the word I used in my stream.
Gorgeous. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, gorgeous and enthralling. Yes.
Oh, yeah. Well,
it was very pretty.
Well, not only was it stylistically and cinematically beautiful, but the story was well crafted. Very, very well crafted. This was a faithful.
Oh, hell yeah.
I think this is one of the most faithful adaptations, if not the most faithful adaptation of Frank Herbert's masterpiece, Dune.
Holy crap, yes.
And and Jackie, you are very welcome. Thank you for being here tonight. But yeah, like I said, I have been waiting 2 years for this movie. Probably a little bit longer ever since they announced it. And I have been chomping at the bit. I've been waiting for October. I'm like waiting. Where? And then finally they released it. And I talked to my ambassador earlier this week or this past week. I was like, Dune's coming out this week. She's like, yeah. I was like, I want to go see it in the IMAX. She's like, well, we can afford it, so go do it. I'm like, can we bring you back anything? She's like, you can bring me back a pretzel. Okay. that's my ambassador for you.
That's okay. My wife isn't interested in Dune, but she respects the fact that I love the movie.
Oh yeah.
Yep, exactly the same thing here.
And the casting, I was on the fence on. I won't lie. I was on the fence. I didn't know all these actors and actresses, but I have to admit, and I say this not begrudgingly one iota, this is the cast. This is the cast that worked. I mean, you've got Timothée Chalamet as Paul Atreides. You've got Rebecca Ferguson as the Lady Jessica. You've got Zendaya.
Isaac as
you got Oscar Isaac as Leto the Atreides the First. I mean, you've got Zendaya as Jason Momoa is Duncan Idaho.
Idaho,
freaking crap!
Character.
With all due respect to Richard Jordan and the original, this Duncan Idaho could kick that Duncan Idaho's ass. I mean it. This is one of the sword masters of the Gaizen.
Jason Momoa did his salute. I mean, spoiler, when he did his salute, I was like, oh my God, he's going to go out
he's going to go out. No, you reversed it.
He did, Duncan. He was the best. Duncan Idaho was my favorite character from Dune. I mean, I knew he was going to die, but the point is, he really just,
he went out like a boss.
Yes, he went out like a boss, and it was like, when he did the whole salute, the whole dude, and then he went out and fought. I was like, the
Sardaukar,
so gorgeous.
And holy freaking crap, the Sardaukar. These were not guys in black hazmat suits. These were guys that could whip serious ass. These were, and even the Harkonnen soldiers, they were freaking intimidating. It was. The set design, the costume design, the character design, everything across the board. The design for this film, Denis Villeneuve busted his ass. Him and the design team, the concept artists, everybody, the costuming team, everybody just nailed this. And it was gorgeous. So I don't want to monopolize.
Are you sure you're not copying my review? Because you're saying nailed it gorgeous like I did in my review.
Shut up. Geek, shut up. Netcat, your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts are that I went into the movie being like, well, here we go. Let's see if they finally managed to do a good job. And I ended up going, holy shit. they actually took the time to do the freaking world building. And yeah,
yes.
Now about how I felt leading up to it as well. I was so goddamn pissed that it was released overseas almost a month before us. Now I'm just sitting here going, I'm going to kill you all. I'm going to kill you.
But it was worth. Now, I will tell you all, I did do some research because I believe in doing research because I want to bring as much facts for my audience as I possibly can. I don't come into things haphazardly. I did do some research, and so far, now granted, it's only been open since Thursday night. According to Variety, Dune is set to voyage to a 33 million plus opening weekend. Now, thus far, Deadline and Hollywood Reporter are both reporting that it has so far made 17.5 million opening day.
Nice.
I'm going to tell you this. I looked at Rotten Tomatoes earlier today when I was, and this is one of the rarities where both the critics and the
audience are
we are on the same
Rotten
page.
Tomatoes.
This is epic. Like I said, this is epic. This is enthralling.
Yes,
it is beautiful. The Ambassador, the score, the
oh my gosh,
the cinematography,
okay,
the music, the acting, I've had people.
I have a word. Oh, I have a word for this.
I would like to. I would like to say something to Jeff B. Yeah. I know that the two of you went to see it in the theater. I watched it on HBO Max, and
dude, that's cool.
Part of my thing
I did too.
Oh, but part of my thing is that I love captions, and there is so much going on, especially when they do things like the cone of silence and things like that.
Yeah,
that having those captions can really make a difference as well. So I get that it's a better experience overall, possibly, but for me, having the captions probably made it much better for me than if I'd gone to the theater.
No, and hey, and that I can understand that. Now, like I mentioned, I don't know if you heard me say this before I came in, or before you came in. I actually went opening night to see it in the IMAX. I saw it in IMAX.
Yep.
And
yeah, I was listening when you started.
Okay, all right. So, Jeff B, go to the theater, yes, but if you have the opportunity to see this in an IMAX, go see this. You guys know I don't swear very much. Go see this fucking movie in the fucking IMAX. It is worth the extra money. And the cool thing was about my theater, we've got the reclining seats, which I'm like, oh, I not only get to see this kick-ass movie, but I get to be comfortable while I do it. Now, there's a word I want to use. Yeah, there's a word I want to use for this movie, and I think it's appropriate here. And you brought it up just a minute ago, Geek. The score. Hans Zimmer's score made this movie sci-fi operatic. That's how I would almost describe this film.
Yeah, I can see that.
This, okay, when it comes to scores, this was John Williams level good.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. It was fantastic. The score really made it. And the characters, Leto Atreides, Paul Atreides, Gurney Halleck, Duncan Idaho, the Harkins, the Bene Gesserits, they nailed it. They freaking nailed it.
Yeah, they did. I do want to address Jackie's comment here. I feel like the man, I think it's great, but the major cringe moments and music was mostly too loud or inappropriate. I can understand where you're coming from, Jackie. For some people, the music might have been a bit jarring and maybe a bit disorienting. So I do understand that. But for me, my dad trained me to have a decent ear for music, so I know for a lot of people, sound, music, and all those sorts of things can be jarring in a particular experience and kind of take you out of it. So, and I do get that. The thing I will say that this, I think the score, I think it's one of the best scores. Yes, I will agree with you, Geek, that it's Hans Zimmer is right up there with John Williams.
I think that some people, and I can respect that maybe the music and the score took some people out. But maybe it's because, and I'm not going to judge, maybe they weren't familiar with, the format, we've all probably read the book, we've all seen 84 movie and seen the sci-fi in miniseries.
Yeah.
This so we are comparing it to really those things.
Yes.
And whereas people who have probably never seen those before don't have those whereas we are like, this was the best adaptation. I mean, you even said it on my stream. You said this was the adaptation we were hoping for, and you are hands down right.
Yeah, and I do want, real quick before I move on to my next point, I do want to send a shout to chat. Nazo Servant Arc, Nazo, I believe this is the first time. I believe this is a friend of yours, Netcat. So,
yep, very good friend.
Okay, well, Nazo, it is a pleasure to meet you, and thank you for being here tonight. And I hope you do enjoy the stream. And here is a classic line.
Good to see you, Nazo.
Yeah, here is a classic line from the original '84 film, Atomics. We'll probably get that in part 2. And now I do want to let you all know I have heard rumors that they are currently filming part 2, or they're in pre-production for part 2. Part 2 is going to be in production soon.
Yeah, I was looking. I was actually looking that up a little bit earlier today, and I found 1 or 2 sources that say that it's been greenlit, but I haven't seen anything official yet myself.
Oscar Isaac, oh my god, played Leto Atreides
perfectly.
Holy shit!
Yes.
Oh hell yeah!
Jason Momoa played freaking my favorite character, Duncan Idaho. Perfect.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
Yeah, and Gurney Alec, everything just. I honestly don't have, some people have complaints about the movie. I really can't find a complaint.
And that's fair. And Marcus Cruz, good to see you as always. Is this movie cinema? I'm going to watch anime instead. Blade Runner 2049 still the best film that Denis Villeneuve has made. Marcus, I don't know if you're just not a sci-fi person. Marcus, if you better be trolling, because honestly, while I do agree with part of your statement here, I think you should give Dune a chance. I'm not, I very rarely, I'm not saying if you don't, we can no longer be friends, but I am highly encouraging you. If you are a fan of great sci-fi, you should go see this. I am dead serious on this. Let's see.
I think you need to highlight the next part.
Yeah, the music and visuals are fantastic. My issues are the characters. Everyone felt either really subdued or absolute batshit crazy.
I disagree with that part.
You and I have discussed it a bit already.
I disagree with the characters were batshit. I thought they did a really good job, because let's take Lady Jessica. She is the strongest woman you see. And the only time she is afraid is when the Bene Gesserit mother shows up.
Yeah, Gaius Helen Mohayim. Oh my gosh,
exactly.
That scene.
And that is the only time you ever see her fear and scared. there is so much to this movie that was just so well done. I don't know how to describe it any better than I can. It was just.
I will address Jackie's comment here. Jackie, I think that was part of the intent. Honestly, I do understand where you're coming from with the Apocalypse Now vibe, particularly the scene after the sacking of Arakeen on Dune, and he's in that vat. And just so you all know, full warning now. I know we're 20 minutes in. There will be spoilers in this because I don't believe in doing non-spoiler reviews. So, and I think a lot of people already know the basic story of the first book in the Dune series. So there really isn't necessarily anything to necessarily spoil, but just full spoilers. Just full spoiler warning now. I can understand where you're coming from with that one, Jackie, and I didn't really catch that per se, but now that you bring it up, I do kind of understand where you're coming from. But I think the Harkonnens, or I always pronounce it Harkonnens, but as they call them, the Harkonnens.
Yeah. Whatever.
They were always kind of meant to be that kind of, I don't want to say necessarily one note, but I think they were kind of a personification of capitalism, the dark side of capitalism going very, very wrong and being completely and utterly corrupt. I mean, if you look at the visual of the landscape of Giedi Prime, you almost get a Coruscant-esque vibe from it. But here's the other thing. If you know, go ahead, Nick. Yeah,
I would almost no problem. I would almost more call it more like it to Warhammer 40K with one of the city worlds, which is kind of like Coruscant but darker. Hive worlds. That's the term.
Yeah, I am familiar with Warhammer.
Ambassador, I would put it this way. The Harkins were, based on what we understand moderately, were a darker Ferengi, whereas House Atreides, remember, or even Klingons or Romulans, their success was through conquest, whereas House Atreides was going in to try to make, peace and work with them. And, the best part about the movie is they knew that this was not a good thing. This was
a setup.
The whole point of this movie is the Emperor is pitting House Harkonnen and House Atreides against each other. And I think
and favoring one side.
But that is what the Emperor is trying to do. He's trying to pit them against to weaken them.
Yes, exactly. Because, and I will bring up Jackie's comment here because I think there's merit in it. The Harkons are more complex, and the Baron is not as sadistic in the books. He tries to persuade / fool people, not just destroy them. I am very familiar with the first book. I am familiar with the character of Baron Vladimir Harkonnen or Harkonnen. If I don't say it the way they say it, but I see him more as I saw him more as a layered character. He can be the master manipulator. He can be that sort of person. We might see that more so in the second part of Dune, but I think in this particular aspect they were wanting to play up the brutality of who the Harkonnens are, and the thing
is evidenced by his nephew.
Yes,
because they definitely showed that with his nephew.
Hey, Ambassador, did you I assume you've seen the original movie and the sci-fi original, right?
I have, yes. Yeah, I've watched both.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Did you not... Okay. When I saw this, and I didn't know it until I looked it up, this is Skarsgård. And you know, when he was doing the hovering in this movie, that
it was
actually,
limited.
it was also intimidating. It
That was the
actually
idea.
showed, it showed purpose versus
It
just
showed
being
dominance.
an effect.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and you know,
the way that
I
he would
have to-
hover up to actually get height on somebody in the middle of a conversation.
Yes. So, and I'll bring up Nazo's comment here. I hope it gets a sequel. This first one felt like it was building to a better sequel. If we don't get one, that would be colossally disappointing. Yeah, Nazo, I will wholeheartedly agree with you on that one.
We're in a
Hell yeah.
sequel. There's no way.
I would,
There-
you know, I don't want to
With
go
everything
out
else
on a
that's
limb.
been with everything else that's been greenlit the day of release, what the hell if this doesn't get one?
Yeah, I think honestly, Warner Brothers has put a lot of faith and a lot of trust in Denis Villeneuve because he does good films. He has the only movie of his I have not seen, at least as I'm that I'm aware of, is The Arrival, and I do want to see that. I need to find it.
I love The Arrival.
Yeah,
I thought it was a
I
very
have
good
mixed opinions on
very
that
good
one.
movie.
fair enough. Dude,
well, I enjoyed it, but that's okay.
Yeah,
Its time travel worked, which is the reason why I watched it. But everything else in the movie, I was like, "What the hell is this?"
No,
Sorry.
I thought Arrival was a great movie.
Okay.
I thought this movie was, you know, Ambassador, you said it in your thing. You said this is the adaptation we wanted. And
yeah, I know.
100% agree with you.
Oh, yeah.
This is the adaptation. You know,
well,
somebody
to be more accurate, I said
that,
this was the adaptation we've been waiting for. That's what I did say.
Yes,
but
exactly.
Oh, actually, something on that. My wife is actually going to be watching it tomorrow morning, and she has never been able to get more than like 100 pages into the book. So we'll see tomorrow how she thinks of it.
Well, and you know, and here's the thing, and I do want to say just real quick to Price is Right reviews. Price is, as always, good to see you, bud, and thank you for being here tonight. I never claimed to be the wellspring of all of knowledge on Dune. There are other channels who know this stuff a lot better than I do. So, but I do understand how it can be a very dense and a very heavy book for a first-time reader to get into. I have not actually read the books, but I have listened to the audible versions of them. And those have been, at least I think it was audible. Maybe it was just audiobook or something. I can't remember. It's been a while. But I did enjoy, this was a story that really intrigued me. This is a world that I became invested in. I mean, I remember seeing the David Lynch film. I liked it for what it was. I came to understand down the road that wasn't as faithful an adaptation as it could have been. And I think the fact that they gave Denis Villeneuve carte blanche to do this first book and 2 movies was the right call. The biggest hope for me, truly, is to see at least the story told through the lifetime of Leto II. That's, if they go no further than that, I will be completely and utterly satisfied. Now, if they decide to go all the way through, all the way to Chapter House, I will be thrilled beyond belief, because this is a franchise. This is an IP that I feel has both been somewhat misrepresented but also neglected, because the Dune universe, it has a very strong and a very passionate fan base. I'm part of it.
One of the things, Ambassador, that I thought was amazing this time versus the other times was the hand in the box, because it focused more on his expressions and not on what was going on in the box. That to me was just absolutely beautiful.
Yeah. That sequence, that's a sequence that we are. If for those of us who are familiar with the other adaptations, we are very familiar with that particular scene. It is iconic. Put your hand in the box. I hold your neck, Jabbar. I have to admit, I did like the costuming design for the Bene Gesserit Reverend Mother Gaius Hela Mohayim. It made her seem somewhat inhuman. So I did approve of that. And I also like the fact that it was Jessica, not Paul, that was doing the recitation. Fear is the mind killer, is the little death that brings complete obliteration. I did like that she was the one that she could, and you just by her reaction, you almost got the sense that she could feel the pain that Paul was feeling. And I have to say this, I am not terribly familiar with Timothée Chalamet's body of work as an actor. I'm going to have to do some research into what he has done in his career. Granted, he's young, so I don't know how much he has done. I think, honestly, he was the perfect casting.
I actually had a thought on.
Sure.
I actually had a thought. I actually had a thought about when she was, but when she was doing the catechism. I was actually thinking that since we've seen just how good of hearing Paul has, that she might have actually been reciting those lines for Paul to hear, reminding him.
Well, the funny thing
tell you some of the things that. Oh, sorry, Ambassador.
No, go ahead, Geek.
But
it's all right.
Some of the things I loved is Lady Jessica is a strong woman. She can do most anything until the Bene Gesserit mother shows up. This is the only time you see her afraid.
Yep.
This is the only time you ever see that woman scared. You never see her in the rest of the movie afraid of anyone. She doesn't fear anyone except the Bene Gesserit mother. There is weight to that. And then I'll tell you something else that was really good. The Atreides sign language. That little subtle sign language that only the Atreides knew. That was beautiful to do.
Yeah,
that was subtle. That was, it was something. And, oh my goodness, the voice, the way they did the voice.
The way they did that was one thing I was really good. I was not literally, like, I was figuratively on the edge of my seat because in the opening scene between Paul and Jessica when they're having breakfast and she's like, do the voice. And I'm sitting on the edge of my seat, or like I said, figuratively, and I was like tuned in. I was like really tuned in. And the way that they have depicted the voice here, it does reflect back to the whole concept of genetic memory that they all pull upon, particularly the Bene Gesserit can pull upon their past memories, their past lives. And they can, because if you notice, both with Jessica, with the Reverend Mother, and with Paul, their voices had a blending to them that was part masculine and part feminine. And I very much loved that, the way they depicted the voice. And
remember in the movie too, Ambassador, Lady Jessica is telling him, you're not ready for this. And he's trying to save them. And he's like, he knows he's not able to, convince them, but he's trying. Take her mask off. And, he gets punched, and then and Jessica is like, does her thing with her fingers. And it's like, take your mask off. Take her mask off. And Jessica goes, kill the pilot. And I was just like, oh my God, this was just the way she was able to casually, she said it takes a long time to learn how to do the voice. And she did it when she could do it. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Whew.
Well, and I do want to bring up Nazo's comment here because I think this is a very this is something I actually had been thinking about myself, Nazo. So I'm actually glad you brought this up. I really felt for Paul in the film. Everyone from dad to mom to his teachers, the Bene Gesserit, all deciding his destiny for him kind of sucked. Like he had zero freedom of choice. Yeah, Nazo, the interesting thing is, and there's a very pivotal moment, particularly after the sacking of Arakeen, when they're out in the desert and they're in that tent, and there's all that spice in the tent, and he's having a reaction to it, and he's seeing the future, and it just absolutely scared him to death. I mean, he sees him and Chani in some sort of ship dressed all in black flying above, I think it's the surface of Caladan, and he sees the Atreides banner. He sees a crusade, as he said, carried out in my father's name. He's like, people are worshiping at the shrine of my father's skull, and it, for a young man his age, with all the pressures that he is under now, particularly now that he knows his father is dead, he is now Duke of the House of Atreides, even though the Harkonnens believe they've destroyed them. And the other thing, and I was listening to people as they were walking out of the theater and leaving for after the show was over. And there was a couple of guys that were just a few steps behind me, or ahead of me, I think. And they're like, one guy said, I really like the fact that they didn't play this up as him being sort of chosen messiah per se, but more so that he is the product of selected breeding, that the Bene Gesserits have been breeding have been trying to create what we all know as the Kwisatz Haderach. And I think the way that
Moradip.
No, you're thinking of Paul's Fremen name, the Kwisatz Haderach, the being that can see the past, the present, the future, and can go into places that the Bene Gesserit cannot. And I really like the fact that they did play it up as not so much him being some sort of anointed one, but him being the product of all this genetic manipulation across thousands of years. And the other thing that I found really intriguing about this particular adaptation was the depiction of the Mentats, particularly Thufir Hawat and Hydra to Freeze. And I have to admit, as much as I love Freddie Jones as Thufir in the 80s film, I like this Thufir better, because he doesn't do all the weird, wacky things that the other Thufir did. I'm trying to find the name of the actor. Let's see. Hang on. I've actually got the IMDb up here. I just got to get to it. Stephen McKinley. This guy, he did a very fine job in the few scenes that he was in as Thufir Hawat. The scene where the Emperor's Herald comes to Caladan, and Leto asks him, how much did it cost for them to come all this way just for this bit of ceremony? And Thufir's eyes go white, and he's like, he rattles off a bunch of figures, and I think to myself, this was perfect. This was the best adaptation or depiction of a mentat's mental abilities, mathematical abilities that I have seen.
I'm going to be honest with you, Ambassador.
Hmm.
I love Oscar Isaac in Deo Ex Machina. I think this was his best performance. And I don't think anybody has done Leto Atreides better than him. I'm just going to leave it at that. I mean, when he gave the how do I say this? Damn the spice!
Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay, we had Jürgen Prochnow in the 80s as Leto Atreides, then we had William Hurt in the sci-fi miniseries. I honestly feel like Isaacs captured the complexity of the character better than either one of those actors. And don't get me wrong, they are both very good actors in their own ways.
I would agree. He did a fantastic job.
But I think the way Isaacs was directed and the script that he was given very much portrayed Leto in a more layered and interesting light.
I've said, Ambassador, I've read the book, I've seen the original movie from '84.
Yeah,
I've
we all have.
seen the sci-fi adaptation.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure. I didn't think something could be this beautiful. As I said, this gorgeous. And I don't use it, but I mean, it was just, Oscar Isaac, in which I know he's a good actor because I've seen him in Deo Ex Machina in other movies.
Mm-hmm.
And oh my God, I was so like on the edge of my seat. Damn the spice! I was like, yeah!
Yeah, I agree. One of the other factors of this movie was the personal interactions particularly within the Atreides house. And especially after the hunter seeker scene, and honestly, I thought they didn't drag it out as much as the 80s film did. It was short. It was brief.
Tried to take a life of my son.
But the interesting thing is, I don't believe, if I remember correctly, Leto doesn't say that line here. I don't in this particular version. He doesn't say that here.
He does.
Thufir, okay. Thufir tries to give his resignation, and Leto's like, "Damn your honor, damn your honor." Damn your honor and damn your pride. I do not accept your resignation, particularly now when we need you the most. He's like, you want absolution?
Yes.
Go catch some spies.
That was one of my favorite lines, actually.
Yeah. They tried to say, kill my son. I love the way that went because a man of honor, he's a military man. He's like me. And he failed his commander or his general or his leader and offers his resignation as a man of honor. And he's like, no, I'm not accepting your resignation. You're going to go find this guy.
Yeah, exactly.
It is beautiful. There is so much beauty in this movie.
Oh, I know.
In the translation that is just so well done.
Well, and speaking of that, and I do want to bring up Netcat's comment here. Sorry about that. Or not Netcat, but Nazos. The performance is a tribute and a compliment to the writing. Yes, Nazo, I would wholeheartedly agree with you on that. Now, the interesting thing that Villeneuve did with this film, he set the stage of this universe very well. I honestly liked the opening of this film, I think, much better. The interesting thing for me was how stark the different worlds are. I mean, obviously you have Arrakis, Dune, arid, desolate world where no life should live at all, but yet it does. You've got Caladan, and you've got Gidi Prime, and they're all distinctly beautiful. So,
I'll tell you what I loved the most. Was when they actually did the spitting. And they actually did it better than any other, Duncan Idaho, which Jason Momoa did a fantastic job playing Duncan.
It just goes to show that Jason Momoa has a lot of range as an actor. Not to mention if he's given good direction and good material to work with. And him as Duncan Idaho, he performed very, very well. He was very believable. I do want to bring up Jackie's comment here real quick. Mentats are not military men. Correct. Thufir is a strategist, but very moving and very good acting, but he vanishes. Yeah, honestly, Jackie, I wanted more Thufir in this. Now, I'll just be interested to see how they play out, whether or not he survived, because in one adaptation, he survives and he's captured by the Harkonnens, and they turn him into one of their agents or whatever, sadly.
I had a conversation. I had a conversation with someone, Ambassador, who's like, why is it that Paul Atreides is so, in love with Duncan Idaho?
I don't know if he's necessarily in love, but I think...
hold on a second. Whereas Duncan Idaho is the more teacher. I said, think about it this way. Think of Duncan Idaho as his an idea of an older brother, and think of Gurney Alec as that uncle.
Yes, I would say that. Yeah,
that's where I put that, because he was so happy to see Duncan every time, and I thought, this is a brotherly thing. This is a friendship or brotherly love.
Yes.
Whereas where it's with Gurney Alec, and when Gurney Alec brings the weapons out, I thought of him as more that uncle that you have.
Yes,
Whereas Duncan Idaho was the friend. That's where I always assumed it went. And I thought they did a kick-ass job.
I agree. And I do want to address George's comment. George, I knew you were in here a few minutes. I know you've been in here. And honestly, it will be a travesty if Dune Part 2 doesn't happen. More movies like this. George, if any of the rumors I have heard are true, they'll be going into production, I think, relatively soon. They did an interview with Villeneuve not too long ago, and there was allusions to the fact that Part 2 is going to get made. So, and I do want to address Nazo's comment here. And Nazo, I did see your comment. We just we didn't get a chance to address this. But who would you guys think would be a good casting for Feyd-Rautha, the other Harkonnen brother or cousin? Any ideas?
I have no clue. I'm terrible with questions like this.
Geek, what about you? Any idea?
Do you know when it comes to the Harkonnens?
Well, the question is, who would be a good actor to cast for the character of Feyd-Rautha?
Oh, who would be the character? I'm gonna have to actually sleep on that.
Nazo, if I could
What do
give
you
you
think,
maybe.
What do you think, bud?
Well, they're going to need a young actor because if you recall, both Fade and Paul are both fairly close in age, and obviously you don't want another singer. You don't want Sting again. You don't want a repeat of that. Ugh. That was just absolutely. Ugh.
What did you think, Ambassador and Sir? What did you guys think about the movement of Baron Harkin? Because back when we saw it in the 84 and the sci-fi movie, it was more over the top, more comical.
Yeah.
This felt, in my
Menacing.
opinion, yes, thank you. There you go. That's what I thought.
Yes.
It felt menacing. It felt scary for the first time of any movie I've seen of Dune. Seeing Baron Harkin actually gravitate up and do his thing actually felt menacing for the first time.
That's what I was mentioning earlier about him actually using it to assert dominance, where he'd be at almost eye level and then he'd go up. But like you say, it wasn't comical. It was actually, oh shit, and he was using it as actual dominance posturing.
Well, and and here's the thing. I did not care for the 84 version or the 80s version of Baron Harkonnen. I honestly did. That particular role just took me completely out of the film. That's one of the things that I will be perfectly candid with. Took me out of the film. Now, Ian McNeice in the Sci-Fi Channel adaptation for both Dune and Children of Dune, his was better by a mile, but I have to admit, Stellan Skarsgård, the transformation he the transformation that he underwent to be Baron Vladimir Harkonnen for this role.
I didn't even know he was hard. And you know what? I had to look it up, and I was like, holy shit, this is a Skarsgård. And I was like, no wonder it's so fucking good. Sorry.
Well, and no.
I don't mean to.
Well, geek. I cussed a little while ago, so don't worry about that. No, honestly,
I've been trying to make sure not to.
When they announced the casting for this film a couple of years ago, I was like, yes. I don't know about you, but I will give you a shot. Yes. I don't know about you either, but I will give you a shot. But when they announced Stellan Skarsgård for Harkonnen, for Baron Harkonnen, I was like, yes. I can.
What did you think about the guy who played Paul Atreides? I mean, he came across with a lot of people, I think, as the old soy boy woke shit, but he was nothing like that.
Oh, please. Anybody who says that doesn't know.
Saying, I know. He did Paul Atreides about as perfect as you can get.
Yeah. What I was starting to say earlier is that for comparing this to the previous movie and miniseries, I actually don't remember either of those all that well. I actually read the original Dune book like so many times while growing up that my mom actually made me stop getting it out from the library because she was like, "You need to get other books." So I vaguely remember the stuff from the other movies, but almost everything that I judge stuff off of is based off of my memory of the books. Yeah. So, yeah.
My thing is that. Oh, sorry, sorry, sir.
Go ahead. You're fine.
Yeah, I said something when I did my review of it on my channel. I said two things: enthralled and gorgeous.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
And those are not words I use for many shows. In fact, I've never used them before. This was visually, scorally gorgeous. It had the cast done right. I know some people have some issues with it. That's fine. I get it. I'm going to be honest. I don't have an issue with this movie. And quite frankly, if it doesn't get a goddamn Oscar, I think there's an insult. And I'm going to get on
honestly, for me, Oscar awards and everything are all well and good, but personally, for me, it just doesn't make a difference in the long run. So
this
that's fine.
Will not be United Saunders.
Thanks for having me on. I've just got to head out. So, it was good talking to you guys.
Yeah, Nick,
take care, Nick.
A pleasure, and hope to see you again soon, bud. And you have a good night. And thank you for popping in.
You too. Oh yeah, have a good night. Bye.
Later, bud. Peace.
Yeah, I don't know if it'll Ambassador. I don't know if it'll get nominated for an Oscar, and you know what? That's okay. But I mean, when is the last time? I mean, this is the thing I said in my review. When is the last time you saw a big budget blockbuster movie that was this good? Because I'm going to tell you, in my opinion, it was Lord of the Rings era.
Yeah, I would agree with that assessment. I mean, honestly, I've seen a lot of films over the last several years, even before COVID took hit us and everything. But I will say this in regards to Dune. I honestly did, as much as I know the story, I wanted to see what Villeneuve was going to do with his adaptation of it. That was the biggest thing for me, that I was like, okay, this is a story a lot of people know, particularly those that are fans of books and of the other adaptations. So what are you going to do to set yourself apart from those other adaptations? And Villeneuve did it in a number of ways, and some of them actually rather inventive. One of the really inventive decisions that he made to really set his adaptation of Dune apart was to have somewhat of a focus on the different languages that exist within this world. You've got Dr. Yui, who we all know his part in the story. He's the traitor to House Atreides. I mean, granted, he is a traitor that has a reason, and I think we would all agree a fairly valid reason for doing what he does. But he speaks Mandarin, and him and Paul speak Mandarin. Granted, it's only a few lines. And then, of course, you've got the Fremen language, Chaboski, I think it's called. You've got the Sardaukar language, which is very harsh and very brutal. And then, of course, you've also got the Harkonnen language, which in itself is also very harsh and brutal. And I think that was a really interesting, not just a nice way to set apart the movie from the other adaptations that have come before, but it was also a nice piece of world building to show that this is a universe that is ruled, or not so much ruled, but is multicultural in a lot of ways. Even though everybody looks like a particular race of human or whatever, but this is a vast, vast universe populated by millions, if not billions, of people from all sorts of backgrounds.
Ambassador, the best way I would be in military like I am and going through all stuff. Do you know what this world, this particular thing represents to me? Tribalism.
Yes.
It really follows a tribalism way of life. Now, tribalism, some people think only means a certain area or certain. Tribalism can mean an entire planet. It can be you have a certain way of doing things. And it's tribal. The freemen have a tribal way of doing things. Remember when they spit. That is, I was so glad they kept that in there, because if they hadn't have spit, it would have been a problem with the movie, because water is so important. Duncan Idaho, thank you for your gift. And then Duncan spits and Leto spits. And I'm like, damn, you guys nailed this stuff.
Well,
oh, go ahead, brother. Sorry.
No, it's all right. The interesting thing for me also with this film was the world design. And well, not rephrase, was the cinematography of all the different worlds and how Villeneuve set his shots. And you have the overview of the vast ocean when they get to Caladan, and then you have the above shot of Arrakis, and the vast amount of just sand dunes, which almost mirrored the ocean and the oceans of Caladan. And I loved how Villeneuve he was able to stage his shots, how this whole thing was set in, how this whole thing was put together. Denis Villeneuve is a director that has just recently, within the last year or a couple of years, come into my awareness. And having seen this, and I actually watched Blade Runner 2049 a few months ago. This guy does know what he's doing in terms as a director, as cinematographer, excuse me.
Cinematography.
Yes. And honestly, for me, it's been a very long time that I have been just taken aback, but in a good way, just by the shot of simple landscapes. But seeing the above shot of those clear crystal blue waters of Caladan just speaks volumes to the purity and the beauty and the rawness of these worlds. So, and I do want to send a shout to the chat of a recent acquaintance and someone that I have had the opportunity to speak with on a few occasions. Star Wars Theology. It is good to see you as always, and hope you're having a great Saturday night. Thank you for being here this evening, and hope you. I don't know Theology if you've had a chance to check out Dune, but that's what the stream's about tonight. So, and that cat, are. Just let me get this out real quick, Geek, and then you can go. Netcat, you are more than welcome, and you are always, you will always be welcome here. So anytime you're free and you want to jump in on one of my streams, you're welcome. So anyway, go ahead, Geek.
Yeah, sorry about that. One of the things that this movie did that I never saw in any other adaptations was the movement on the sand.
Mm-hmm.
That was beautiful. Like I said, it was beautiful. It was well done. Duncan, Idaho was my favorite character. Other than Gurney Alec, they were all done good, and I was so happy to see. Spoiler alert: Duncan, Idaho goes out like a boss.
Yes, he does. Well, and
and I was happy about that. I was like, Jason Momoa really took Duncan, Idaho's character right. And
he made it his own. Yeah.
Exactly. And shoot, who's playing Gurney Alec? I keep forgetting his
Josh
name.
Brolin.
Josh Brolin. He is playing Gurney Alec to almost perfection. When they have that battle between each other, and I'm just like, I know what's about to happen, but I'm like, I'm not in the mood. Oh, you think that's the conversation, you think that's appropriate? And he's like, your mood doesn't, I got you. And I got you. And it's just Josh Brolin written, Oscar Isaac. Oh my goodness. They got this cast right. They got the actors right. They got the directors right. They kept all the woke crap out of the way and just made
I wasn't terribly
movie. You said it. Well, you said it on my said it on my review.
You've already brought that up a few times. I know. So,
the other thing is it is amazing. Ambassador, when was the last time you actually got a sci-fi movie that was this beautiful?
To be candid, Blade Runner 2049. That was a beautifully shot and a very well put together film. I think it's somewhat underrated, honestly, but of course it is Denis Villeneuve.
And what I'm saying is we've had you and I agree this is a beautiful sci-fi movie. And it's been a long time since we've seen really a big budget sci-fi movie that has been this engaging for.
Well, the interesting thing for me was the theater I was in, it was a packed house. And I'll bring up George's comment here. So, Denis makes beautiful movies in general. Arrival and Blade Runner 2049 are pure examples, as well as Dune. Yeah, I would wholeheartedly agree. Jackie, as much as I enjoyed Zack Snyder's Justice League, and with all due respect, because I do have it on 4K, I am a fan of the film. I am a big fan of Zack Snyder in general, of his work. But speaking from a different aspect or a different perspective, because Zack Snyder does his type of movies, Denis Villeneuve does his types of movies. Denis Villeneuve's are somewhat more very beautiful, but also there is a sense of they're very operatic as well. Yeah, Nick, I really would encourage you to check out 2049. Actually, Dave Bautista, who plays Raban in Dune, actually has a scene at the beginning of the movie. It is a very intense, a very entertaining scene. It really helps set up the world in a very cool way. But something else I did want to comment upon is the fight choreography in this film and the way that the fights themselves are choreographed. There is no gunplay. If there is, there's very limited gunplay. The majority of warfare is done by sword, and I thought that was actually a really cool way to set this Dune apart from the other Dunes that have happened in the past. Now, you obviously have the very angular blades that the Atreides use. The Harkonnens and the Sardaukar, their weapons are not much dissimilar, but they seem to have more of a brutal design to it. And
I like the.
Go ahead, Geek. No, go ahead. Go ahead. You're fine.
What I loved about this was the salute.
Yeah.
And when I saw Duncan Idaho do the salute, it was like I almost cried. Because like I knew what was about to happen to him. But I mean, the way they did that, they had an interesting way with their blade. They had the salute, because salutes are different. For those who don't, I salute like this, whereas the British, they salute like this. This is a salute, and he's saluting. He's taking the weapon and he is doing this, and he is doing this to salute his people. And you see Paul Atreides do that later. And
he does it.
You see that as it is a symbol. It's a salute. It's most people. I don't know if people understood that, but to me, I was like, "Oh my God, that's a salute." That would have been like me doing this, or maybe a Brit doing this. But it was like, when I saw this and I saw that, I was like, this is a salute. This is a renderance of honor. And I was just blown away by this movie.
Well, the interesting thing is, and I will bring up, I've got Netcat's comment up here. The fights were much better than I thought it would be after the trailers. I think they made it better after the trailers were released. Netcat, that is very distinctly possible. But here's the other interesting thing. The majority of warfare in the Dune universe is done mono for the most part. Granted, there is some larger artillery weaponry that is used by the Harkonnens and so on, particularly in the attack on Arrakeen. But the warfare is very brutal. It's up close and personal. Some firearms are used, but they're used sparingly. And I think that's actually that was a very nice touch to differentiate this Dune from the ones of the past. The other thing I will remark upon is I like the design of the crysknives. I think this was a more, again, I don't like to repeat myself, but I think this was a more faithful adaptation of what a crysknife should look like. And each one has somewhat of a distinction to it. And I like how the whole weapon itself functions. There's a balance to it. There's a weight to it. You can see Paul flipping it around in his hand, testing the balance out in his hand, getting ready for his fight and everything with Jameis, who challenges Stilgar and actually challenges Jessica. And Stilgar, it's like, you cannot challenge a Zayadina. You cannot challenge a woman. And Jameis is like, fine, who will be her champion? And when Paul steps forward, You're like,
may your dagger chipper and break. You know,
the phrase is may your blade chip and shatter.
Yeah, exactly. But you know where I was going. And I was like, when I heard that, I was like, oh God, they brought that in there. I was like, you know, that was amazing. But you know, think of let's think of Dune, the science fiction opera, as more maybe Greek Roman mythology. Look at the ships they have. They're not all, I mean, look at the ships they have. They're not all powerful. They don't have a bunch of weapons. We never see a weapons attack. These people are still using kinetic weapons. And rarely do we actually see a projectile weapon, even though this is in the future. And that is some of the beauty of the advancement. They've got advancement, but they still live in this feudal system and this still, you know, society where they still use kinetics versus projectile weapons.
Yeah. Well, and you know, the whole functioning of the shielding technology in this particular universe, you have to adapt your fighting style to get around that because the shielding is very, very effective. So everything has a vibration to it to help work its way through the shield technology of this universe. And I think also the fact that a lot of times the reason why warfare is more mano a mano, face to face, rather than it being just people with guns and everything, is that you want to make sure your opponent's dead. And if your bullet just ricochets or bounces off the shield, you're kind of up the creek.
That's a good analogy. I didn't even think about that, Ambassador. Yeah, the reason why they're using because remember when Gurney Alex says, you know, a slower blade can get through a shield. So a strong protector. Remember when Paul and the Seeker comes through and he, you know, gets in the way of it, you know, doing his thing through the shield. The whole point is it's going too fast. This is actually why they don't use projectiles so much, because projectiles go so fast. Whereas Gurney Alex says, you know, a slower blade can get through the shield. I mean, Brolin really did Gurney Alex like a boss, in my opinion.
Yeah, Josh Brolin, I think. Well, I love Patrick Stewart as Gurney Halleck from the original Dune. Josh Brolin did just as good a job. And everything, and
smile, Gurney. I am smiling.
Yeah.
You know, when this movie comes out on DVD, Blu-ray, I'm buying it. I'm buying it. I cannot. This is, you said it perfect. This is the adaptation we've always wanted. You're right. This is the adaptation of Dune.
We've been waiting for. So
yes, this is the adaptation we've been waiting for, and I have true faith that after this movie, they are going to make the second movie just as good. That's my opinion. And the guy who played Paul Atreides, I think a lot of people thought he was going to be a soy boy. But when you see him, yes,
you cannot.
He is young. Yes, he is lanky. Yes, he is not, you know, bulk or nothing. But he is still a fighter. He is still strong. He is still a person. And his talks with his father and Oscar Isaac, this is the best I've seen him in since Deus Machina.
Well, and that was one of the other nice things because we got more than one or two scenes between Paul and Leto. We got I think maybe at least two or three scenes between Paul and Leto. And I really now one thing I do want to bring up, and this is because I did read the prequel books, House Atreides, House Harkonnen, and House Carina, which were all sequels or prequels to the original Dune books. I do like the fact that they do make reference to Leto's father, Paulus. And you do see the painting on the wall of Paulus. And they do make reference to him a few times throughout the movie.
Yes.
And I think that was a very nice touch. You have the little statue of the figure fighting the bull, which is obviously in reference to Paulus. And excuse me, sorry. I think it's also a nice little callback to relationship between Leto and his father, because Leto himself, he didn't want to be Duke. He didn't want to be the head of the House of Atreides. And when Leto says to him, maybe you'll find your own way, just like I did. He's like, because this will be in your future. And he holds up his hand that has the ring, the ring, the seal of the House of Atreides. And
if you say no, you will never be more than anything I wanted, my son.
To be
that
as my son. That was a beautiful line.
Yes, it was. And it just really had a powerful impact as a space opera. Unlike anything we've got in a long time. I mean, yes, we knew what was going to happen to Leto Atreides, but
it's still
way Oscar Isaac played Leto out was beautiful. The way he interacted with Paul Atreides was beautiful. It's like, you'll never be anything but my son. And it's like, that is important. As parents, that is important. It's like, you're not going to be, what that said was, you're not going to disappoint me.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and the other relationship in the film that I was very interested in was the relationship between Leto and Jessica. And there's a scene when things are starting to get very harried and things are starting to get very dire. And Leto realizes the noose is starting to tighten around their neck, and he asks Jessica, if anything happens, will you protect our son? And she's like, of course, I will. And she's like, I will. And he's like, no, I'm not asking his mother. I'm asking the Bene Gesserit. Will you protect our son?
Yes, that was so important.
That's the one, I like the fact that Leto makes that distinction, because he says in the film, he's like, I should have married you. I should have made you my wife. I should have done this, but I didn't. Yeah, and he loves her.
And for those of you who don't know, this is actually important for the sequel.
Yeah, because
he said, I should have made you my wife. He should have done. He regretted not marrying her. And then remember, the Bene Gesserits were like, you were only supposed to
bear daughters.
With daughters, not men, not boys. There is a very distinction among the Bene. And remember, the Bene Gesserit are in cahoots right now with the Harkins, and they're like, we don't care about the Duke, but you can't harm these people. And they're like, fine, we won't do it. And it's like, well, they can die in the desert. It's like, it's a political game. And you and I understand politics very well. We get this concept. It's like, yeah, I know how to play this game. And, it was just, it was beautiful. It was really a beautiful movie. The visuals, the Arrakis, Dune, the spice flowing over on the sand. I've never seen anything so beautiful in the way they did that. And then when you were on House Atreides, you had the water, the sands there, and then you saw the homeland of House Harkonnen, and it was more industrialized and kind of, ugly and stuff. It was very different. But what was really beautiful was he said, how have we ruled Caladan? Through air and water. Here we have to learn how to do. We have to learn desert
with desert power. Yeah. And speaking of a very powerful and forceful individual, one that I have come to regard as a friend, and always has a good take, has a good mind for these sort of films and anything, the one and only Mr. Zach Leary. Zach, good to see you, bud.
What's up, guys?
Hey, Zach, how you doing, buddy?
What's up, man? Long time no see. Me and him were on a show this morning.
I know. I caught some of the replay, so I heard.
And I kicked what's his name's ass. I think not to be rude or anything, but
no, it's all right. Like I said, I caught part of the replay, so I know the whole situation. Zach, I'm glad you got my message, and whereas those uncivilized heathens over on Captain Trek's channel don't talk about anything civilized, here we are more cultured. We are more civilized. So,
fun show, Zach, though. I do like that show. That's a weird
I
show,
do too.
But
I say
like it.
I say that to tease a little bit. I mean, I like Captain Trek. He's good. He's good people. So, but Zach, we've been going for a little bit. Anything but your thoughts on Denis Villeneuve's adaptation of Dune? What did you think?
There was a douchebag reporter on Twitter who said that they hated it, and that was before it came out. And I retweeted that and said, "Thank God this prick doesn't like it," which means it's going to be really good. And I turned out to be right. So I went and looked up the guy. This guy gave the Blade Runner terrible reviews. I said, "Oh, great! If he didn't like that, this new one's going to be, right up my alley," and it was. Really good. And what Geek was saying, just when I came on here, it is the movie looks fantastic. I mean, it looks fucking great. It's visually a very interesting movie. Original ship designs, which is nice. It doesn't look like anything we've really seen.
I remember us talking about that. Actually, Ambassador, I meant to mention that. Zach, go ahead and talk about, please, the originality of the ships, because I know we talked about that earlier today. Please,
like even the circular design on the giant ship, where all the little ships come out of the mouth of the ship.
Yeah, the Guild Highliner,
where it looks like a whale shark.
A whale shark, or even looked like a mechanical version of the sandworms on Arrakis.
Oh, that's a good point too.
So go ahead, Zach, please.
Yeah, and you had the one ships that looked like dragonflies completely to me.
Oh,
it totally looked like
the ornithopters.
Totally looked like dragonflies, right?
Yeah, that was the impression I got as well. Yeah, I did like the ship design. Well, let me ask you, Zach. Out of all the performances, what was a standout for you?
Oh, in terms of in this film?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's, this may surprise you, but I think my favorite character in the film is Baron Harkonnen.
He did that as a surprise.
Scar.
So
I thought
Skarsgård.
he was
Yeah,
fucking awesome.
you know what? I didn't
Yes.
even, Zach, I didn't even realize that was Skarsgård until I looked it up, and I was like, oh, no wonder it was so fucking good. Sorry, Ambassador.
He was. No, he was really
He's a
fucking
geek.
good. I
Geek, you're
concur
fine,
with
man.
that. Yeah, he was great. Just even the line delivery, Ambassador, when he goes, "Kill them all," and leans back into that creepy mud bath, right? Just awesome character and scary, man. Really creepy when he just gets up off the, at the end of the table when the trader comes in and he just rises up and it's out of focus and you just see the shadow of him rise up and slowly start creeping forward. It's like, oh shit. And when it cuts to him in the close-up, he's standing there and he is imposing as fuck. Like, let's not forget, this dude is like 450 pounds and he's sitting there hovering above this guy and he gets right up in his face. I said you could join him and you will. Right? Oh, just awesome character. Creepy as hell. Intimidating.
What I thought was so amazing about Baron Harkin in this was any other time we've seen the adaptation, it's kind of over the top. Yes. This it was over the top and, in my opinion, a little campy at times in both versions. In this version, when he rises, the way they did it, it is actually menacing and scary. Unlike anything else they've ever done, this felt like this man, when he's doing this, it felt menacing.
Well, yeah. And I think that was one of Villeneuve's, that was deliberate on Villeneuve's part. Because if you think about it, everyone lives, quote unquote, in the shadow of the Harkonnen. Even the people on Gidi Prime live in the shadow of Baron Vladimir Harkonnen. And honestly, the way the character design alone and how they visualize the hovering device or the levitation device that he uses to get around. Now, I don't know if either one of you know this. Have either one of you ever read the prequel books, House Atreides, House Harkonnen, and House Carino?
No.
Okay. I actually had the opportunity to. Now, I don't know if I ever mentioned this before, but just as a quick refresher, Harkonnen was at one time a very slim, very trim, very athletic individual. He did not always look like what we see in this movie. Or, well, in the first book anyhow, because in the second book I can't remember exactly, but beside the point. He assaults, and I'm using a polite term to say this. He assaults Gaius Helen Mohayim sexually. And in the course of that assault, she lets off some sort of toxic pheromone or something into his bloodstream or into his body. And it causes him to start to balloon up in weight and to become very grotesque in his appearance. And he has to use that levitation device to move around because he can no longer, his legs can no longer support him. And I love how they visualized the levitation device. It was something that was implanted into the back of his neck, into his spine. And it was subtle, but at the same time, it was visually interesting because you see him it's almost like it's a neural command that that device has been planted into the neural relays in his body, and he just simply thinks float or whatever the command may be, and he moves. If you notice,
there's no button.
unlike
No, there isn't.
There's no button.
No. Yeah,
there's no button. In the older one, I forget which one, somebody used the button to send him flying into one of the worm's mouth.
Yeah, it was actually Paul's sister Alia. It was in
which was goofy as hell.
It was in
Alia actually Ambassador, do you think Alia is going to be part of the next movie?
She is part of.
She would almost have.
She's part of this. Yeah, she's part of the story. Yeah, she's absolutely part of the story. Now I'm just wondering who they're.
I'm just waiting for her to say, "My brother is coming."
I don't think Villeneuve will have that can't be of a line in his version. I seriously doubt it.
I will say this though. I hate that backstory you just told me. I hate it, and hopefully it's not a part of this. I mean, to me, it's better to have him as a gluttonous character. I don't like any kind of disease with him. I would rather him just be the epitome of gluttony and
I can understand that the original origin I think was just fine where there wasn't necessarily an origin. It was probably just it was alluded to that he was just some sort of deformed individual who had to use this device to get around essentially.
Well, he doesn't look deformed in this like he did in the other ones with the boils and marks. He just looked overweight.
He just looks like he just looks like, he has a thing. I found him, the way they did this character with Skarsgård, more menacing and more threatening and more intimidating than I've seen in the other versions. Yes. This guy really was frightening. And when he levitated, it was like, oh, something bad's about to happen.
One of my favorite shots is the Harkonnen troops, and they had teamed up with a different house, right, Ambassador, to pull off that attack.
It wasn't a different house.
A different group or organization, right?
They are the Emperor's private army known as the Sardaukar.
Okay, so the Harkonnens had teamed up with them to pull off the attack. When you see the troops arriving after the initial attack and bombing, you just see the Baron hovering above them as they enter. Creepy as hell. One of my favorite shots. Just him hovering above the troops. It's freaky. It's inhuman. It's which makes it great.
Well, the thing that I appreciated about this particular adaptation was the fact that every house has its own distinct design, and even the Sardaukar, which are a extension of the House of Carino, which is the ruling house of the Imperium. While their uniforms are all white and beautiful, well, not white, but white and pristine, what's inside those suits is brutal, disgusting, and vicious as all hell. I mean, you look at this is the first time, except for maybe in the Children of Dune adaptation, that we see Seleucus Secundus. And I have to admit that chanting or throat singing or whatever it is that makes up the Sardaukar language was unnerving as hell. And I kind of mentioned this before you came in, Zach. But it almost sounded like Inuit throat singing or something to that along those lines. And I don't know if either one of you noticed this. At the beginning of the movie, when the movie first starts, there's a line of dialogue that is in the Sardaukar language. And it's put in subtitles at the bottom. And it says, "Dreams are from the deep."
Yes, I saw that.
I thought that was a very poignant and a very important line. Because if you think about all of Paul's dreams, they speak of something deep and something powerful that's going to happen to him and to the people around him.
What about what about this Admiral? This sign language, which I thought was beautifully done throughout the movie. They all have their own individual sign language that only, that house is going to know. And when she's, when Lady Jessica is telling him, don't do this, and, he uses his voice and to get the massacre, and she's like, kill him, and do it. I'm like, the way they use the voice was just beautifully done. And they even admitted, he's not there yet, but he's working on it. Whereas Lady Jessica, the whole point was they muzzled her because they knew what she could do, but they were ignorant of what Paul could do.
Yeah, exactly. Well, here's the interesting thing. It's not so much that sign language was something specific to all of the houses. Because if you notice, Jessica and Paul, and to a certain degree, Dr. Yui, are the only ones that really use a sign language. So I think it's something more specific to the different schools that they all went to, or the fact that Paul has been exposed to Bene Gesserit teaching. Now, I did, it's a very covert and a very effective way. And now, again, although she went in the scene with the Shadout Mapes, when the Shadout has the Chris knife that she wants to give to Jessica, and that female Atreides soldier is behind her, that might actually be something that only the House of Atreides does, because you don't see the Sardaukar do it, you don't see the Harkonnens do it, and you don't see the Fremen do it. You hear them speaking that Chazaboska.
You're going to have language. To speak in English, Ambassador, for me to understand you. You're getting a little too detailed for me over there.
Sorry. Where did I lose you?
I'm a what you would call a normie fan of Dune.
Okay.
Well, I'm a norm fan of Dune too, but what I'm saying is one of the beauties is what I was saying is one of the beauties is they use a form of sign language, and Ambassador, I think you might have missed it with. It wasn't the reason why I say it was significant to House Atreides, because Lady Jessica used that sign language with a trooper.
Yeah, and that was the scene I was.
And they did prepare for violence. And
that was the scene I was. That was the scene I was actually referencing. Zach,
and that scene, that lady was so fucking creepy, Ambassador. I would have fired her ass right there on the spot before she even began. What the fuck you're going to hire this lady? She was suspect.
Yeah, but Jessica is a fairly decent judge of character, and obviously she chose the right person, because if Yui ends up killing her, she was someone that could be trusted. I will say the actress who played Shadout Mapes in this particular version was good.
The servant lady?
The
servant character?
Yes, the servant character, the one that gets killed by Yui, the one that Leto finds just before the attack on the palace there on Arrakis. I will say I will always have a bit of a soft spot for Linda Hunt in the Lynch adaptation, but this actress, she did fine too. So,
well, can I say this?
Yeah, floor is yours, Zach. Go ahead.
I think my true favorite character is I guess my film villainy, glutton makes me like the Baron the most, but I think my true favorite character has to be the Oscar Isaac character. Was an awesome character
Leto.
in the
Leto
movie.
Atreides.
I mean, he did a marvelous job as the character.
Yes,
just amazing job.
Well, I said this before you came in, Zach. I have to, have you seen the? I'm assuming you saw the Lynch adaptation. Have you seen the sci-fi miniseries they did back in the early 2000s?
Yeah, I think I've seen both of them. I think I own both of them actually. So
okay.
Yeah, they kind of blend together for me. Though is the problem. Is all something happened in a different one. What?
Damn the spice.
Anyway, I have to admit, and again, this is something I said before you came in, Zach. I think Isaac's performance as Leto Atreides was a lot more layered, and we got a lot more time with him in this particular version.
Almost 2 hours.
Yeah. Whereas in the other adaptations, he has maybe 1 or 2 scenes, and then he's dead.
Yeah.
We actually get a chance to build a relationship, to build a rapport. And that is the one thing that I really Geek, let me get this out real quick, and then you can have your say. The one thing that I really, really approved of, and I don't know if you've heard this, but there have been rumors that they are going to start production on part 2. I did like the fact that we didn't get the whole story and crammed into one movie, because there is so much lore and history and character moments and world building in this one book alone. And you want to know about these characters. You want to be invested in these characters, because these are, I think, some of the most interesting and intriguing characters in science fiction. I mean, they are. Granted, the Dune fandom is somewhat of a niche fandom, but it's a very passionate one.
I don't think not for long.
Honestly, I put a comment on a fellow YouTuber's channel and everything earlier today.
Quinn's Ideas.
And no,
is that it?
No, I haven't watched his review yet, but I can imagine what he had to say. He loved it. I can imagine. Doesn't surprise me. No, this was on a different channel, neither one of you know about, and that's okay.
Yep.
I put several bullet points, and my last bullet point was Dune's freaking awesome. Everyone should go see it. I mean, I
agree. I agree. I 100% agree with you, Ambassador. This was, this is sci-fi space opera at its best. I have nothing more to say than that. This is something we as geeks, as sci-fi fans, have been dreaming of. This was beautiful. This was gorgeous. This was epic and enthralling. I have no other words to go with it other than that, because I don't use those words very often. But oh my goodness, Oscar Isaac as Leto and his talk with, Paul is gorgeous, just beautiful. If your answer is no, you will always, you will never be any more than what I wanted. My son. I was just like, oh my God. As a father, this is how I would say something to my son. They just hit the right notes, the right tone, and the visuals, the ships were very unique to us in sci-fi. I thought they were done very well.
Yeah. And that cat, you have a good night, and we'll catch you next time, bud. Behave yourself, and if you can't behave yourself, don't get caught.
Well, I'll say this too. It did not feel like the whole attack sequence was a plot narrative. It seemed like we were watching House Atreides make a series of calculated errors, which was very interesting too, as they had made their judgment on the situation itself was severely, I think, impaired by the Oscar Isaacs character wanting to bring some kind of prestige to his family name, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's where that whole thing comes from. But because I could not imagine myself in his shoes accepting the same task. Wow. I would have said no.
One of the things that was different, though, between the Harkins and the Atreides was the Atreides were trying to come up with the idea of making peace with the Fremen to solidify a unit. But one of the things that you see in the movie is the Atreides know the whole point of this change in governing is because they know the Harkins, the Emperor is not stupid. He knows the Harkins are going to attack. He knows they're going to go after House Atreides to weaken them both. This is stated by the House Atreides and how they have to deal with it. They know they are accepting basically almost a suicide mission.
Well,
but
you know,
he is determined. Oh, sorry.
Well, the thing I was going to say, even in the aftermath, and I'm glad that there actually is sort of an aftermath by a reaction by various characters from the survivors of the House Atreides when Duncan goes to find Leah Kynes, and he's like, they sent the best of us here to die. Are you going to say nothing? And she says, I've been instructed to see nothing or say nothing. Because she knows if she does, she's a dead woman. And Zach, yeah, I can 100% see that similarity there between John Goodman as a gambler and Harkonnen. Yeah, definitely.
He's got the same gravelly voice. Hit that picture on the top right corner there. That's a good one to see this similarity.
My favorite.
Same. He's got the same gravelly voice, and when we meet him, he's got several scenes encased in a steam room. So it's for whatever reason, it totally reminded me of the Baron.
Yeah, I can see that totally. Yeah. You know,
good movie, by the way. If you haven't seen it, it's a remake of a James Caan film.
Really? Yep. I'll have to check it out then.
And James Caan is awesome too. So the original. Really
James
Caan is a boss.
Yeah, James Caan's always been one of my favorite actors. Has been for a long time. Ever since I hit one of his earliest roles.
The Godfather, Sonny, wasn't that?
I think, yeah. Well, I remember one of his very earliest roles was actually in an old John Wayne Western. It's all by far one of my all-time favorite Westerns, El Dorado.
Yeah,
I love him.
Oh, God, I love El Dorado.
Who doesn't?
Actually, Ambassador, since you brought that up, you never guess what I found in the $5 bin at
Walmart
today. It was literally a 2-film movie for $5. My favorite Clint Eastwood movie, The Outlaw, Josie Wells, and then Unforgiven.
Nice.
I was like, you want $5 for this? I'm grabbing it.
I don't blame you.
I recently picked up Collection edition, Ambassadorial Wing Collection Edition. That would be a fun one. I recently picked up a action figure of Prince Zior. I think that's how you say it.
Nice.
Right? Prince Zior. Is that how you pronounce that?
Are you talking about
Star
Wars?
Star Wars? Yeah.
Shizor.
Zizor.
Shizor.
Yeah, I actually have the character.
Nice.
Hey. That's from Shadows of the Empire. Oh,
Yep.
Ambassador, I don't know if you know this, but I went to a store about a month ago and actually found the album of Shadows of the Empire.
Nice. Very cool.
And yeah, I took it home.
Well,
Ambassador, I don't know how much longer you're going to be on, but it's 10 o'clock. I've got to get some sleep, so I will catch you later.
Bud. Okay.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Yes,
look,
always.
This movie, this is something I think we have been wanting for a long time. I would put it on Lord of the Rings level good.
I think that's fair.
I think so too. And that's saying a lot. That's saying a lot.
Yes.
I was surprised. I was literally surprised. I went and watched it in my room on HBO Max, and I was on, like I said, I used the words gorgeous and enthralled. And I've not said that about a movie ever. But this movie was just done right. Every character was treated right. The story was treated right. They really understood what the hell they were doing. And I am looking forward to the second part.
I think all of us are.
And with that being said, Ambassador, thank you for having me on. Zach, it's good to see you, buddy. I'm going to get some sleep. You guys have a blessed one.
You too, bud. We'll talk to you later.
Well, what do I always say, man, is it's who you pick, and they pick the right guy for the job. That's what it comes down to.
Well, and I think also for Villeneuve, this was a passion project because he has done so much in the sci-fi realm throughout his career. Granted, he hasn't had that long of a career per se, but he's picked stuff that he's been passionate about, and you can tell that passion comes out in the project that we got, in the movie that we got, because Villeneuve has built, I think, a fairly decent reputation as a director who knows how to put together a movie well. And I'm not trying to hype him up or build him up. These are just my honest, sincere thoughts.
You have to.
No, he is, one of the things that I was a little concerned about with this was the fact that was he going to be able to bring the political intrigue aspect of this movie or the story into the movie and have it translate well. And I think honestly he did. And you have the scene where the Emperor's Herald shows up on Caladan, and you've got representatives from the Spacing Guild and from the various houses of the Landsraad, and you've got obviously representatives from the Emperor's court as well. But here's the thing that I found most intriguing about the opening of this film. We never once see a navigator, and we never see the Emperor himself. I thought that honestly was a great move. Keep the primary, or at least from my perspective, the primary antagonist off screen, but allude to him. Have others serve as his intermediary, and have others serve as his voice, as a display of his power. And I think the costuming design for particularly the Spacing Guild representatives and the other members of that entourage that comes to Caladan with the Emperor's Herald was a nice way to show the diversification of the different houses and the different cultures that make up the Imperium. That for me was one of the other aspects that I was not so much concerned about, but very interested to see how they pulled it off. And I think they pulled it off very well. So, Zach, your thoughts?
Yeah. It also creates this the concept of an empire that there's some similarity to the British Empire, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where the American colonies and so forth, where there's a distance that I think creates kind of an interesting concept. Do you see what I'm saying? I think the lack of them being in the forefront gives us a certain view of the empire itself, which is in an interesting kind of story way. And it's not a giant point, right? But I'm with you. I think it's an interesting point, and the emperor is mentioned several times, at least 5 times, something like that.
Yeah, at least, and by various characters. I mean, you get him referenced by various characters in House Atreides. You have him referenced by the Reverend Mother. You have him referenced by the Baron.
Oh Jesus, the Reverend Mother! What a freaky character, huh?
Yeah, I actually talked about this before you came in. The scene between her and Paul, I think that particular scene was very well executed, and it was a better execution at least from my perspective, than the one that we got with from the Lynch adaptation, because it's all done through subtle facial gestures and the use of intense eye contact, particularly on Paul's part. Like he's trying to will himself out of this situation, and amazingly, he does survive. That, for me, was one of the most impressive scenes in the whole film. The other one that I mentioned, and I would like to hear your thoughts on this. After the destruction of the palace there on Arrakis, and Paul and Jessica have gone into hiding, and they're in that underground tent, and he gets exposed to all that spice, and he has that massive hallucination, and he sees the future. What were your thoughts on that, Zach?
Different versions of the future, I believe. He didn't see the future per se. He saw different paths.
I think it was... No, this is just my interpretation. I think this is how they intended it to be. It was one future, but it was different snapshots of that same future.
No, I don't agree with that. No, the Quinn's Idea channel said it was different futures. That the future, unlike the other versions, this one is providing us with glimpses into different possibilities, which makes it more interesting.
And that's a possibility too. The way I interpreted it, as it was flashes at different points in Paul's journey as
well, it can't be because Jason Momoa is dead, right? And he sees in one of the visions Jason Momoa with the whatever the group is in the desert,
the Fremen.
Yeah.
Well, no, I'm talking about specifically when they're in the tent after the Harkonnens destroy the palace that they've been living in, and they kill Leto, and they presumably kill Gurney Halleck, and so on. That was the particular scene. That was the particular flashes. The visions that Paul was having at that time. He was seeing his future. He was seeing the holy war that's carried out in his name and because of his in the name of his father and his father's house, the Atreides house, and he sees himself and Chani in some sort of ship floating above the surface of some world, presumably Caladan, maybe. So, do want to say hi to the chat, Tim Possible and J Man, gentlemen. It is good to see you, and yeah, J Man. It just depends on how far along they go in the series. If Jason will be back for to reprise his role as Duncan Idaho, just a different Duncan Idaho. So, but Zach, go ahead.
Okay, a couple of thoughts that I'm not sure if you covered here. So, the Josh Brolin character is the Patrick Stewart character. Is that correct?
Yes, Gurney Halleck. Yeah, that was the character that Patrick Stewart played in the David Lynch adaptation.
I like Brolin in this part better.
For me, it's kind of a split. I liked both. I think there is some added layers to Brolin's character that weren't given to Stewart, particularly that line of dialogue when he's talking to Paul about the Harkonnens. Here's an interesting thing that we learn about in the prequel books
regarding Gurney.
Regarding Gurney.
Okay.
Gurney was actually a slave on Gidi Prime.
Oh,
the
okay.
Harkonnens world, and he eventually escapes. And he goes and he makes his way to Caladan. They make reference to Leto's father, Paulus Atreides. He was obviously Duke before Leto was. It's during Paulus's lifetime. It's during those three books, House Atreides, House Harkonnen, and House Carino, the prequel books, that we are introduced to Paulus Atreides, Leto's father. And we're also introduced to several other characters. We're introduced to Duncan Idaho. We're introduced to to Leto and Jessica, and Thufir Hawat, and all of them. So, but yeah, honestly,
go ahead. What I was going to say is the Brolin character too felt underutilized to me, and I assumed he was dead. Somebody corrected me on the podcast this morning, but I thought he got killed during that battle scene.
Well, do you remember in the Lynch adaptation, there's actually a scene between Paul and Gurney. It's during a raid, and Gurney has taken up with a group of smugglers. And Paul actually says to him, "There's no need for your weapons with me, Gurney Halleck." And Gurney's like, "Paul? Paul, is that you?" And Paul holds up his hand, and he has the Atreides signet ring on his hand.
By Kyle. What's his name? Kyle
MacLachlan. Kyle MacLachlan. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's that very
who was terribly miscast, I think.
You're not wrong. but the
good actor. I do like him, but miscast.
Yeah. But yeah, Gurney does survive the attack. Now, knowing Villeneuve, he will probably keep that in there because one, there is that tie, there is that relationship. Geek and everything mentioned this before you came in. The relationships that Paul has with various people within the house. I'd like your take on this as well, and because I kind of agree with what Geek says, but I'd like to hear your take. The relationship between Paul and Duncan is that of brothers. The relationship between Paul and Gurney is that of an uncle and a nephew dynamic. What do you think about that?
Even I would say his relationship with his father is that of a teacher and student.
Maybe
that's what that is. But and you could say with every father and son, but I think it's different when you're talking about a royal hierarchy. I'm sure it's different. So you kind of have an interesting relationship there too. Yeah. No, I would agree with that. I think Yeah, listen, man, I would love to see Brolin come back. You know, if I'm sitting there at the writer table for the next one, they'd say, "Do we bring back Brolin? Is that even a question? Of course you bring back Brolin, one of the best ever, right? Of course you bring him back. And we'll see him again, I think, hopefully. But
well, if they stick to the end, if they stick to the story, he will be back.
Well, now, it's like Ambassador. If I ask you, should we have Josh Brolin in our film or not? What's the answer? It's yes.
Well, let's see. He's only played I think one of the best villains in the MCU
ever.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Bring him back. Give him a few extra. Give him a couple extra grand on top of what we're giving him already, and say, now you get to really kick some ass. So yeah, I would definitely agree.
Well, he's more of a bad motherfucker than Patrick Stewart too. This guy Brolin looks like he could crush Patrick Stewart with 2 fingers.
Yeah, and even Patrick Stewart in his prime. Yeah, I would agree with that most wholeheartedly.
And who doesn't love Patrick Stewart? But I just even physically, Gurney is imposing in this.
Yes, I most definitely agree. You know,
underutilized though. Do you agree with that? A little underutilized.
Well, there were several characters that were sort of underutilized and everything. Unfortunately, you can give time to certain characters, and you unfortunately have to cut out time for others. There's a character in this that is by far one of my all-time favorite characters from just about any science fiction franchise ever. And it's the whole concept of the character, but the character himself as well. Not to mention, he's just got a cool ass name, Thufir Hawat. I loved, by far my favorite. I will say this: Freddie Jones as Thufir in the Lynch film, he was good. I liked him in that. But I like this other gentleman. I had it pulled up. Hang on one second. Stephen McKinley as Thufir Hawat in this. Sort of. He was more of a strategist and a military advisor.
Is that the guy who tries to give his resignation?
Yes. Yeah. That was Thufir. Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I liked him too. Yeah. Is he dead?
Potentially, it just depends on what they do. If they stick to the adaptation of the book, Thufir actually survives, but he's unfortunately captured by the Harkonnens, and he's press ganged into their service.
Good actor, very good actor. The first time I saw him was in a movie called Tower Heist. Have you seen that?
I've heard of it. I have heard of it, but
yeah, like I told you, I'll watch a horrible film. I don't care, but he was good in it, and he did the one of the Purge movies. You're probably familiar with those, but I've been aware of him for a while. Good actor.
Not particularly. I've never actually watched any of the Purge films,
but you've heard of him. He was a main character.
Yes, I've heard of him. Yes, and I'll bring up J-Man's comment here. They never mention any of the Mentats abilities. The human computers. Yeah, they don't mention it, but they do visualize it. And I think they visualize it very nicely in this particular version, J-Man. So J-Man, I'm sorry I couldn't come onto your stream this evening. I had my own to do. So, but I will definitely catch the replay because I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. And hey, J-Man, if you're not too tired and you want to join me and Zach, I do have the link pinned in the chat up above. So, but I did like the visualization of how a Mentat's mind works when it's when they flip the switch and his eyes go white and he just rattles off those numbers just like clockwork.
Oh, is that what that was?
Yes. Go check out Quinn's ideas. He has done several videos on the various schools within the Dune universe, the Bene Gesserits, the Mentats.
I thought he was just really, really good at doing that sort of thing, but no, that makes sense to me. It did look weird, and you're talking about the scene where they first arrive on Arrakis, and he sort of gives them the status, right?
No, I'm talking about when the Emperor's Herald arrives there on Caladan.
I think doesn't he do it again on Arrakis? when he says, "Oh, we've secured this and that and this"?
No, his eyes don't go wide in that scene. No, they stay
okay.
normal. Yeah, they stay.
Is
normal.
that right? Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, I remember him doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, he did it in this. I've already seen this movie twice, Zach, so I pretty much got it to memory. I saw it. I got to I don't know if you heard me say this or anything, but I saw it in IMAX Thursday night. And I actually rewatched it again last night on here at home because we have HBO Max at home, obviously.
How packed was the theater?
I think except for the front 2 rows in the IMAX, it was a packed house.
Oh, good.
Yeah. The interesting thing was I had pre-ordered my ticket, and when I got to the theater and everything, I showed them my phone, and they scanned it, and I saw on the counter, the ticket counter there, they had some miniaturized movie posters for Dune. I was like, "Are these free?" Yes, I did. Yep, I did. It was nothing fancy. It was a miniaturized version of the theatrical poster that they had for the.
I get
for the
those
release
every time I go. If they got them, I take one every time. I used to know the manager of my local theater, and he would bring me the posters after they were done with them. I used to have like 35 posters or something.
Cool. Really? I'll bring up.
Got rid of them though, because once you unhang a poster, you can't really rehang a poster. That's depending on how you put it up, unless you frame it, which I sadly did not do.
That's why you get frames for them. So, I'm just getting ready.
That's awesome though.
Yeah,
that'll fit right in, right on the man cave collection room. That'll be perfect for it.
Yep, exactly. J-Man says, I personally have no issues with the movie, but it's not really doing Dune justice. It needs to be a 10-part miniseries. Let's see. What else? Anyone who loves the movies will die over the book if they go so far as to read it.
Well, J-Man, the problem with that, man, is if they did a miniseries, the whole budget for the miniseries would be whatever it was for this. Actually less than the film, right? We would be talking a lot smaller budget.
Yeah, I watched the sci-fi miniseries. I think my mom still has it on VHS. I haven't had a chance to catch it on DVD. I do have the Children of Dune miniseries on DVD. I need to eventually get a copy of the sci-fi adaptation, because there are good parts in it. I would say it's actually as faithful an adaptation as any. There are just some stylized decisions that I did not care for, and some of the performances I didn't think were up to snuff per se. Alec Newman, I believe is the name of the actor who plays Paul in that particular version. He's good. I don't think he was a miscasting like Kyle MacLachlan was, as you mentioned. But honestly, I have to really, I say this, I stand by this. I think Timothée Chalamet is one of the best, if not the best, film version of Paul Atreides that we've gotten so far.
I think he's the best one too. But even still, that character I've got a couple of problems with, and we could get into that if you'd like. But
yeah, sure, absolutely.
Mentioning the budget. First of all, just to go on the what's his name? J-Man comment. The budget for Dune, the film, the new one, was 165 million. So we're talking about, and it's under 3 hours, so we're talking about over $55 million an hour to work with. A lot of money. The most expensive TV show ever produced is Game of Thrones, which had about a $12 million per episode budget. So Villeneuve had a lot more money to work with than if he had done a mini series. So we would have less on screen. Any way you want to put it, it might still be a marvelous project, but it would be they would not be able to do as much as they were able to do here.
Yeah, and you look at the set design, you look at the digital effects for the ships and for the worlds and so on. Now, granted, they did use a lot of real life landscapes and locales, particularly for Dune itself and for certain parts of Caladan. And it looked gorgeous. I don't know where exactly they shot these wherever these locations are, but it was believable. And
Greenland or Ireland, it looked like something like that.
It might have been, yeah.
Northern Europe, something like that.
Yes, yeah, somewhere along in there. And it was visually, as I've said before, it was visually stunning what they were able to do with these landscapes to make the world really come to life. I mean, you look at I think two of my favorite shots from the whole film, and there's a lot of really good shots in this film. I like the wide shot of the Atreides castle there on Caladan, and you can just make out some of the detail. I won't lie, I would love to have that as I may look and see if I can find it as a wallpaper down the road for my computer, because it's a beautiful design for that castle, and it's a beautiful landscape in and of itself. The other interesting shot, well, it's actually it's a mirror shot, as I would say it. When we see that wide shot,
the old one looked like shit in comparison, I think.
Yes, I would wholeheartedly agree. Yeah, I would wholeheartedly agree. The other shot that I really liked was the surface of Giedi Prime, and then when they go to Arrakis, and you see the facility that the Harkonnens have left behind, it's almost a mirror image of the surface of Giedi Prime itself. It's all urban sprawl. It's all city. It's all built over. You don't see a single patch of sand anywhere beyond until you get past the shield wall. And I thought that was a very nice way to show just how imposing a footprint the Harkonnens leave behind, even though they physically are no longer there. Or well, we at least assume that they aren't, even though we find out later that they left one guy behind.
Even culture-wise, how the people come out and greeted House Atreides, even culturally, as oppressors, left a footprint behind.
Yeah, when Thufir says to Paul and Jessica, they're still operating on their old master's time frame or whatever. I can't remember the exact line.
That's Harkonnen love,
but
that's what they said, right?
Yeah, that's Harkonnen. Yeah, that's Harkonnen love right there. They were forced to do this, but they don't quite understand. Now, I didn't get a chance to talk with Geek with about this, but I do want to talk with you about this a little bit. I did like the idea better in this and how they executed this particular plot line, and particularly in reference to Paul. I like the idea that he is not some chosen one per se, but he is the next phase in this long-running breeding program that the Bene Gesserit have been carrying out.
Cult? You mean?
Well, the Fremen see it as a cult, but I think Paul and Jessica understand it for what it is. They are essentially the cogs in a grander design by the Bene Gesserit.
Well, why does Harkonnen treat them with such respect?
I think it might be just a touch of trepidation on his part. Even though Harkonnen himself is not easily intimidated, the Bene Gesserit are not a group that you want to trifle with.
Never mess with a witch, right?
Yes, because that's how the Baron's mentat, Pyre de Vries, refers to her as you kept your bargain with the witch, because there's been a long-standing rivalry, although it's not so much pronounced between Thufir and Jessica. It is very much pronounced between Piter and when he interacts with Gaius Helen Mohayim, the Reverend Mother. There has been a long-standing feud or rivalry
real quick.
Yeah.
Regarding a deal with the Baron, make sure you're very specific. Right? Make sure you're very specific, because he makes 2 deals in this movie, or 2 agreements that he technically upheld.
Right.
Technically.
Yep.
Because it's like the genie's lamp. Be very specific.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because he's like, yes, you can rejoin your wife, and then cuts off Yue's head.
In death. Here's the thing. Yeah, you can rejoin her in death. So when you make that deal, I want my wife to still be alive and myself to still be alive, and I want us to leave alive, right, and live, without your involvement. You got to be very specific with him. It's very funny how he probably thinks of himself as a man of his word.
Yes, he is. But like I started to say,
yeah.
In terms of how they, from the outside, it seems very cultish, which I will agree with you on, most definitely, particularly to the Fremen. But in terms of Paul and Jessica's perspective on this, they see it more as a grand design or a scheme by the Bene Gesserit to create this super being, or this very powerful mind, as Jessica calls it, the Kwisatz Haderach. How did you feel about how they played with that particular dynamic in this?
You're gonna have to tell me in English, man.
Okay. I'm using words from the movie that
lingo,
you saw.
Yeah, the lingo. Yeah, but what are you talking about?
How do you feel?
What are you asking me? Okay.
How do you feel about Paul and Jessica's perspective on the scheme to create this powerful super being through the Bene Gesserit's breeding programs, and in reference to how the Fremen view Paul and Jessica as some divine or long prophesied deliverer or redeemer or rescuer or something.
Messiah. Yeah, no, I see what you're saying.
If you prefer.
So even the interpretation of people who believe in that, who are not members of that organization, such as the desert people, right? Some of them, you hear certain lines of dialogue throughout the film where somebody will mention something. I think when he arrives at the first location where Jason Momoa gets killed, when he arrives, they say, "Oh, could it really be?" Right? Something along the lines that could it really be him? Right? He looks too young, right? So yeah, it's interesting. And Paul, one of the interesting things about his character is the fact that he's kind of a conflicted character. I mean, he's kind of pissed off in that one scene that his mother even got him involved in it, but at the same time, he wants to redeem his father and get revenge.
Yes. Well, and the scene you're referencing is actually the scene we were talking about earlier, where they're in the tent after the Harkonnens have destroyed the palace, and he has all those visions, and he very emotionally lashes out at Jessica. And when he says, "Your Bene Gesserit made me a freak," because he doesn't want to be able to see these things that he sees. He doesn't want to have these visions that he has, but he has them regardless because they're beyond his power to control. And it's a terrible, for a young man of his age and of his maturity to be gifted with the power of foresight is a terrible burden. But then you put on top of this whole belief structure, this whole prophecy that the Bene Gesserit have been weaving into Fremen society for decades or centuries on end. It can be very jarring. It can be very emotionally traumatic. And I think Paul's reaction in that tent was very real. It was very visceral. And I think
good scene. Very good scene.
Yes. Yeah. A lot of people kind of are very dismissive of science fiction. They just see it as goofy space movies.
People are still dismissive?
I think to varying degrees, yes, there are certain groups of people that are somewhat dismissive of science fiction. I myself, obviously, am not one of them. And I know a lot of people, a lot of my family, a lot of my friends are all, maybe not to the same degree I am, but they all like different types of science fiction. Mm-hmm. Just for an example, my father-in-law, he is as hardcore a Star Trek fan as you will ever meet. Him and my wife, his daughter, they would watch Star Trek TNG together. They would watch Star Trek TOS together.
That's nice, right? That's good.
Yeah. Well, he worked. Well, he worked a lot and he wasn't always home. So the times that he was home, this was a opportunity for the two of them to kind of bond and spend time together. And it was something that they both could do together. And it's one of the reasons I love her because,
she can talk the talk.
Well, here's the crazy thing. Just a little aside. When we first started dating, I went to visit her parents for the first time. And this was in May of 2014. And it was the same year that Days of Future Past came out. And I, as you probably know, am a huge X-Men fan. I'm probably one of the most hardcore X-Men fans around. And I had been waiting and chomping at the bit to see Days of Future Past. And she's like, well, would you want to go to a movie together? I was like, are you familiar with X-Men at all? She's like, a little bit. She's like, but I can do some boning up. And I sent her, I was like, here, I'll help you out. I sent her, I think I did this, or maybe she did it on her own, one or the other. I gave her some background information on who the X-Men were and on the story itself and so on. And we went in, we actually went and saw Days of Future Past theater in her where she lived. When she was still at home with her parents and everything. And we walked out and I was like, well, what'd you think? She's like, for one of my first comic book movies, she's like, I really liked it. And she's like, all the stuff you told me and all the stuff I did, all the research I did on my own, she's like, really helped. I'm like, I think I got to keep her.
Probably the last good X-Men film, by the way.
There are parts of Apocalypse I do like, but I can understand other people's criticism of it and everything, it not being the best. The story I know was fairly simplistic, but the thing for me was seeing an adaptation of Apocalypse on the screen. And the crazy thing is, it was Oscar Isaacs underneath that under that makeup and costuming, and I thought his performance it wasn't like as stellar as his portrayal of Duke Leto Atreides, but his portrayal of Apocalypse, I think there were parts in it that were actually rather good.
Am I mistaken, or is there an actual line that he says in the film that I am the apocalypse?
I haven't watched. It is goofy, but you have to remember too, Zach, these are comic book movies. They are in themselves inherently goofy. But it's been a little bit since I've watched X-Men Apocalypse. I'd have to go back and rewatch it to see if that line is in there.
I think it is.
It might be.
I think it is.
I'll have to rewatch it at some point.
Listen, I can deal with the goofiness of. I think my favorite goofy comic book movies are Spider-Man 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
Really good, really fun. It's got a certain a quality to it that is enjoyable for me.
Yes.
But
well,
if they try and do it in a serious way and bring in the goofiness, it starts to cause a lot of problems.
Yeah. Well, and the interesting thing for me is going to be when Far From or No Way Home comes out in a couple months, and we see where that goes. Because honestly, the crazy thing was they actually had the trailer for Far From Home, or not Far, No Way Home, on before the showing of Dune. They had the trailer for that. They had the trailer for the Batman with Robert Pattinson,
which is going to be awesome. Batman's going to be great.
Yeah, I have to agree. They had another trailer for the Eternals, which was actually really good. I mean, I'm already excited for the Eternals, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm not going to see it.
Fair enough. I'm trying to think. There was one other. I think there was one other trailer.
Uncharted? Is that what it was?
No, it wasn't Uncharted.
I'm getting sick of movies, Ambassador. I would be content if they stopped releasing films and trailers for a year.
And I can understand that too.
They're putting too much out there. It's like, okay, I got this, I got that. The new Rock movie with Gal Gadot. Oh, I got this and that and this. It's getting to be a little too much for me. It's like, God damn, give me a minute.
Yeah. I mean, I think they're trying to catch up because of last year, which I can't understand, but I can understand oversaturation, not just of one particular property, but
just movies. There's too much shit coming at me.
Yeah. I mean, I've been to the movies twice this month. I went to see Let There Be Carnage, and now I've seen Dune. I will say my experience on both was somewhat. There's a bit of a difference there. I was looking forward to Let There Be Carnage, and I enjoyed it. It was fun.
Did they kill Woody Harrelson? Is he dead?
Yeah, they killed Cletus, which I think kind of sucked because honestly, I liked Woody as yeah, I did. I thought his performance was actually pretty good. I haven't seen it.
Well, that's good to hear because I thought Woody was a terrible casting choice for it. But
most people and everything have been fairly positive of his portrayal of Cletus Cassidy or Carnage.
Is he wearing a wig in the film?
If he is, you can't really tell.
Okay, because he's bald. He's bald.
Yeah, if he is, you can't honestly tell. At least I couldn't tell. To a different eye, somebody might be able to, but I couldn't tell. But with Dune, this was a much different experience than Let There Be Carnage, because, and this is not to say anything ill of the director of Let There Be Carnage, but I knew going in to see Dune, it was a Denis Villeneuve film. I've seen part of his work as a director already, so I knew what to expect.
Yeah,
to a degree.
Well, we both love the new Blade Runner, I assume. I love it.
Yes. Oh yeah.
I
2049.
Really like yes.
2049. Yeah. Yes. I absolutely positively enjoyed Blade Runner 2049. Yes. I had mentioned this before.
Done properly, which is hard to imagine. They didn't kill Harrison Ford. They did something interesting with the film. His stamp of approval, his involvement in a project. Like you said, you go into it thinking, "Oh, this is nice. I don't have to worry about this being a piece of shit." You don't have to. I know this is going to be good.
Well, and the other aspect was, it was a story I was familiar with. I mean, as I've mentioned, a lot of people know the basic story of the first book, the first Dune book. They know the plot points, they know the beats, they know the characters. But how do you pull it off?
Well, it still was a little unpredictable which was nice.
Yes. Yeah, because the one thing that I was, and this might be somewhat obvious, but I was interested. Where are they going to cut this off? Where are you going to stop? And I think where they stopped was good. It was a nice cliffhanger, so to speak.
Tell me how it ends again.
Well, essentially, it essentially ends with Paul killing the one Fremen, and then they go off into the desert to siege Jabbar.
Oh, is that the ending where he says my path leads into the desert, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right, gotcha. That guy, I think he saw in a vision training him, right? Is that the same guy or a different guy?
Yes, that was the same guy. But here's the interesting thing. If you noticed, his visions altered or were not 100% parallel to one another.
That's what I was saying. Is you see different versions, I think.
Well, no, I think we've got our wires crossed here, Zach. No offense. When he sees the blood on his hand and he sees himself being stabbed, it's somewhat of a misreading of the vision that of actually what is going to happen. He sees the blood on his hand because he is the one that kills Jameis. Now, granted, there is no blood on his hand the way that it is on Chani's hand in that vision. Visions oftentimes will be interpreted in different ways or be perceived in different ways. And how we actually see them may not be 100% accurate to what actually happens, if that makes sense to you.
I think we're probably saying the same thing, just in different ways. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, interesting place to end the film. I would agree with that. I think the main thing that they tried to cement into our heads was, no, he's not going to run. This is what he's doing now. This is his path. He's made a choice. But in terms of the Paul character, we may disagree a little bit on the Paul character. To me, and it may be a stylistic choice, and if that's the case, I think it works to a certain degree. For me, he's kind of an uninteresting character for the first half of the movie. He's not that interesting in the first half until he gets put in a certain position, right? Do you agree with that, or do you see where I'm coming from?
I can see where you're coming from. Yes, I honestly, the way I looked at Paul in like the first half of the movie, he was kind of moving through, or his reactions were bouncing off of the other characters that he was interacting with. There's actually a very interesting scene, and it's in the aftermath of his test. And I will get to that in just a second, but I do want to say hi to the chat, Arkham Gaming. It is good to see you, bud. And glad you enjoyed Halloween Kills. I'll probably catch that on VOD or on a streaming service or something along the way, but good to see you, and glad you had a good night at the movies tonight. So
I'm glad you liked it too. Yep. So I did not like it, but I'm glad you did.
Yeah. As I was saying, there is a scene between Paul and Jessica in the aftermath of his testing by the Reverend Mother, and they're both shrouded in fog. And I honestly thought that was a very nice visual device that Villeneuve employed, because there's a barrier between the two of them where they both seem distorted to the other. And I think in that particular moment, there's a mist of mistrust or misunderstanding between Paul and his mother at that particular moment. And I thought Villeneuve's, the way that he choreographed or set up that particular scene was actually really, really visually intriguing, because at that particular moment, the two of them are unsure of the other. they're kind of cloaked in this mist of uncertainty with one another. He thought his mother was this person, and now he doesn't quite understand her. And the same is true of Jessica, because now she realizes who her son potentially could be. So
well, it's not only that. It's yeah. Well, I agree with you. But he's also a young man coming into his own and becoming a man throughout the death of his father and the loss of essentially his entire house, right? Aside from some stragglers, right? So he's had to make a quick adjustment, right? And that's there's total real world psychological implications and relations to that as well. If a parent dies or your parents die in a car crash, people grow up very quickly. And that's basically what's going on with him. Is he's no longer somebody who is a student. He's kind of become his own thing. As we saw, Jason Momoa calls him the Duke when he sees him again. Right? He's becoming something that he wasn't at the beginning. So in that sense, he has a good arc, and he's growing and changing and becoming a more powerful character. And I assume they made him kind of boring in the beginning in a certain way, where it's kind of like where there's really no plot with him. He's just kind of walking around and he's kind of listening. But I do like the stuff they did do with him when it comes to character growth and stuff like that. But the only point I'm making, and again, I think this is probably a purposeful choice, is that in the first half of the film, he's just kind of like a walking around. He's kind of just and he's got his visions. He's kind of pathetic. Does that make sense? He's kind of pathetic in the beginning.
I don't know if I would necessarily call him pathetic. I would think he's somewhat conflicted internally and mentally, because he's having all these visions, but he doesn't understand why he's having these visions of this girl that he's never met. And let
me put it to you this way, though. Maybe this will make more sense. Every character he talks to in the beginning is more powerful than he is.
Well, yes. Yeah, I would agree.
Right?
Yes,
Every character.
I would wholeheartedly agree with that. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and even I thought this was another really interesting shot that Villeneuve set up. It's also when they're still in the room with the Reverend Mother after the test, and he's standing there and he's got this very wide leg. His stance, his body posture is much more pensive, but also much more intimidating or powerful. His legs are wide, and his shoulders are very square, and he's got his head slightly down, like he's in a very deep state of contemplation or readiness or whatever. And I found that particular bit of cinematography.
Are you talking about the scene in the beginning? Which scene are you talking about?
I'm talking about after Paul is tested by the Reverend Mother, and Jessica comes back into the room.
Before
the Reverend
Arrakis.
Mother is still they're still on Caladan.
Yep.
And Paul is standing there. The Reverend Mother is still seated, and Jessica has just walked into the room. And they do that shot from two different angles, from behind him in that pose and then facing him in that pose. And it's almost like I said, he's in a very deep contemplative or pensive state. And he's been shaken by his experience, and he's also being questioned by the Reverend Mother about his visions. And
yep,
I thought that was a very interesting moment, a very interesting transitional moment. Not to mention the scene that I mentioned previously.
Yeah, no, I agree with it being a transition. He's not submissive in that scene.
No, but by no means. I mean, yes, he's compelled by the Reverend Mother's very powerful ability to use the voice.
But he's
to
not
compel him.
bowing. He's not bowing down to her, and it's interesting. Doesn't I think his mother tells him do everything she says, right? Something like that.
Yeah, he does tell her to do everything that the Reverend Mother instructs him to do, and either by compulsion or because of because he does it to respect his mother's wishes. He does do it, but there is a measure of defiance in him, and it's kind of buried, but it is there, and you do see it coming out of him during during that particular mental confrontation between him and the Reverend Mother. When he has his hand in the box, you see him lock eyes with her, and you almost can sense what's going on in his mind. He's like, I hate you, and I wish I could break your mind with my own.
Well, she's creepy as fuck. I mean, they did a great job portraying her. She is creepy.
Yeah,
and here's the thing: is she's not over the top at all. She's like calm every time we see her.
Yeah.
Very calm.
Charlotte Rampling is who played Gaius Helen Mohayim.
She reminds me of a witch, for sure.
Well, that's as I mentioned before. That's what many people within the Imperium refer to the Bene Gesserit women as, or the women of the Bene Gesserit as witches.
Yeah, Duke Leary would be getting a divorce once my wife came and said, "Yeah, I'm dealing with the Bene Gesserit. I've joined the cult." I'd be getting a divorce. I'd be kicking her off the planet. I would outlaw them, dude, because they creep me out.
They creep a lot of people out, and that's the idea, because they're supposed to be very enigmatic and somewhat mysterious and very suspicious and also very threatening. Because the thing we see towards the end of the film, when Jessica takes down Stilgar, now we really understand just how lethal a Bene Gesserit woman can be in physical combat. And that's what one day Paul will be like eventually also. And we do get a flash of that.
The confrontation with Javier Bardem's group.
Yes, with the Fremen and still Javier Bardem is Stilgar. Yeah,
tremendous actor. What a great actor. He was underused as well to me. He has like 2 minutes of screen time or something.
Well, he has two scenes. One is when he meets with Duke Leto, and then also at the end when Paul and Jessica are discovered, for lack of a better term, by his group. He will have a bigger role in part 2, because, well, now that they are with the Fremen, and they are basically under Stilgar's protection. Stilgar himself is a leader amongst the Fremen, and he'll definitely have a
leader or the leader.
A leader, because he is leader of that particular the particular seat that they're heading to, Siege Tabar. So, but I want to just real quick say hi to Captain James Biggins. James, good to see you as always, and thanks for popping by. No, but I would.
I wanted to ask you this too. Why have the Harkonnens underestimated? What's the group again in the desert?
The Fremen.
Yeah, why have they underestimated them to such a significant degree? I think it's going to lead to their downfall.
Well, I don't know. I'm assuming you've read the books or you've seen the other adaptations.
No, I've only seen the other two, and I'm foggy on both of them.
That's, I guess, is where your mind and my mind differ, and that's okay. It's just it's a thing. No, eventually the Fremen are actually the tool of the willing tool of Leto's revenge on the Harkonnens for what they did. Not to mention, not only on the Harkonnens but on the Emperor himself. I think it's a matter of ignorant pride on the part of the Harkonnens that they do underestimate the Fremen, because they see them very, very much as barbarians or savage or uncivilized, if you prefer. But the fact is, the Fremen culture is actually, it's more civilized than you may think, but they have had to live a very harsh and very brutal life. Because if you think about trying to survive in a completely or almost completely arid environment like a desert, it makes you hard. It makes you very resolute and very strong-willed and strong-minded. And you are very uneasy to trust anyone else. And trust has to be earned. Respect has to be earned for the Fremen. Nothing is given. Absolutely nothing. And that's why Jameis, the one member of Stilgar's party, questions Stilgar. And also questions Jessica, and that is what leads to.
Would you just 1 moment? I'll be right back. Sorry, sure. I'll be right back.
No,
2 minutes.
Right. Yeah, you're fine, Zach. For those of you that have been here for the biggest part of the stream and everything, I just want to tell you thank you. I know it's been a while since I know I haven't streamed that much this week. I've been kind of busy and so on with work and everything. I do want to let you all know, coming up next month, I'm going to be planning my 2-year YouTube anniversary. I'm going to be working on something for y'all and everything, kind of in the same vein of what I did last year, maybe something a little bit bigger. And do want to let y'all know I am working on a couple of my one project, my Star Wars fan fiction. I'll be bringing that out into the public in December to start the production, quote unquote, on that. And also going to be starting something different over on my Twitch channel. Just something a little more interactive, a little more fun, something a little old school. To give you all just a little bit of a hint. Remember back when MTV actually was all about music? Just a little hint. So, Zach, welcome back.
Yeah, and Revan, which should be really good too. We'll have to see what happens.
Oh, okay, yeah. You hadn't really brought anything up about that. How is that going along? Just curious.
The story trailer is almost done.
Okay.
With you and I in the trailer, which is fun, and
okay, cool.
The campaign is almost ready, so we'll see what happens. Right. We were aiming for it to launch it on Halloween, which seemed like a perfect date to do it, but we'll see. But you and I were involved in the story making of it, so it's always fun seeing your story up there in a movie. So hopefully they do a good job. I'm not involved in the filmmaking.
Oh, I didn't figure you were or anything, and then that's fine. So, I'm probably gonna wrap up here. So I'm gonna let you get your final thoughts on Dune out before we wrap up. So, Zach, the floor is yours.
I started to watch Dune before it was on HBO Max, and I was watching a shitty cam version on a torrent website, and I said to myself, I'm not going to do this to myself. I'm going to wait and see it. I didn't want to rob myself of the experience, so I turned it off after about 5 minutes, and I said, yeah, let me check it out for real. I did not see it in the theater. I saw it on HBO Max. Great experience, great time, and they did exactly what I wanted them to do. I mean, it's a dark movie. You see people Dave Bautista's out there cutting people's heads off. Really good. And here's the thing, Ambassador, is the film is not confusing, which is amazing that they were able to do that. It's not confusing. So I remember the Lynch version with that creepy, what the fuck was that thing, that giant creature that they pulled out? That freaky creature in the tank?
Oh, that was a baby sandworm.
But it was talking.
Oh, no, okay. No, that was a navigator. That was a guild navigator. I know what you're talking about now.
Yeah, what in the fuck? So they didn't do any shit like that. I could understand it. Yeah, it was really good. It was really good. I'm pleased to say.
Well, and to kind of just give my final thoughts on this, honestly, like I mentioned at the start, I have been waiting 2 years for this movie. And I didn't go into it with any presuppositions or anything. I did watch the trailers and so on. You and I actually watched the trailer together. And but aside from that, I went in completely blind, more or less, even though I knew the story. And when I walked out Thursday night, I was like, this is the version I have always hoped I kind of had in my mind, but with other stuff in it that I didn't expect. And I have to admit, this is probably, even if we don't get part two, which I'm just going to say this is a movie that really deserves a sequel, more so than other films deserve sequels. This movie deserves to have the rest of its story told. And I say this with all sincerity and no hyperbole. In Denis Villeneuve, when it comes to Dune, I trust. Because this is a director that understands this world, understands these characters, and understands the lore. And when you have a person that has as much passion and talent and ambition as Denis Villeneuve has, you get movies like Dune Part 1. And I hope within the next year or so, we get Dune Part 2. Because I want to see, at least, if nothing else, this first book done. If we get none of the others, at least this one. If we get more, great. But if we get more, I will be a very, very happy geek and a very happy ambassador in general. So,
yep. I did have one last thing to add to it, if you don't mind.
No, by all means, please.
This movie had the potential to be a gross corporate mess. Okay, it had the potential to be that. Imagine if they had hired the guy who did Jurassic World or something like that. We would have got another, it's Trevorrow or whatever his name is. We would have gotten another generic, big budget, gross studio film, and this is not that. It had a complete potential to be that, and to be. Is it rated R?
PG-13.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yep, PG-13.
Wow. Yep. How amazing, how impressive is that? That's absolutely impressive. PG-13, and they pulled this off. Yeah, it had that potential. It could have been a big, gross studio movie, and it's not.
Yeah. And I will say this. I know that WB gets a lot of flack for some of the decisions they make. Some of it is warranted. But I think in this instance, they left Villeneuve alone and they let him do what he does best, and that is create.
Yeah, the right guy. I mean, Ambassador, you could have this. Imagine if they had put J.J. Abrams. This thing would be a fucking piece of shit.
I don't think I want to.
Right? But you get what I'm saying? It would be awful. Right.
Yeah, I have to agree. And I want to say hello to the chat, Riot Kitty and Tim Possible. Good to see you both, guys. Unfortunately, we're going to be wrapping up here in just a minute. But Riot Kitty, I'm glad that you got a chance to see Dune, whether it was just standard theatrical or IMAX. And just came back from watching Venom 2, by the way. Riot Kitty, DM me on Twitter or whatever. Let me know what you thought of Venom. I'd like to hear your thoughts. So, and Tim Possible, just doing it. I'm watching the original for the first time right now. Oh, Tim. Oh, Tim. I know you watched the new one. Oh, dude. You're in for an experience, but unfortunately it's not gonna be a good one.
It's a Batman Forever type of experience.
I would say more Batman and Robin, but okay.
Same thing to me. They're the same.
Yeah, I understand.
But again, imagine the J.J. Abrams version of this.
I
right?
don't want
They
to,
hired
so
the right guy, didn't they?
They did.
The right
they
guy.
Did, yeah.
Across the board. Amazing.
Yeah. And to my friend, the astronomically awesome quantum physicist Yvette Diavol. Yvette, good to see you, madam. And I may try and pop into Nerdgasm this evening, see you and see LDG and all the rest of the gang. So, but if not, y'all have a great stream, and thank you for popping in, ma'am. Always a pleasure. So, yeah, Tim. I don't envy you. You should have just left well enough alone. You'd. Let's see. I watched the beginning of the original before I passed out, not the movie. I was just really tired, though. I must admit, exposition was better in the 2021 version. Yeah, right. You are not wrong. You're not wrong. So, well, anyways, folks, we are going to go ahead and wrap up for this evening, but I want to thank everybody that tuned in tonight and everybody that was part of the panel. Of course, Netcat, Grandpa Geek, and of course, Mr. Leary here. So, of course, folks, I will be back live next week on Thursday night with the lead up to All Hallows Eve with my review and discussion of one of the all-time greatest horror movies, at least in my opinion, by one of the all-time greats himself, John Carpenter's The Thing. And then next Saturday night, I'll be doing Ambassador's Retro Theater over on Twitch with a watch party for a great little cult classic from the 80s, Critters. And then to wrap up October, I'll be doing a watch party, or not watch party, but I'll be doing my review of the great campy yet iconic classic with the one and only master of the macabre, Vincent Price, House on Haunted Hill. And I also will be discussing the remake that was done in the early 2000s. But that being said, folks, thank you all for being here tonight. For those of you that will catch this on the replay, I hope you enjoyed the discussion. And of course, as always, make sure you leave your thoughts in the comment section down below. And if you have not become a part of the Ambassadorial Wing and you enjoy this discussion tonight, consider hitting that subscribe button and join the conversation, because there is always room for another ambassador in the Ambassadorial Wing. And until next time, these are the Ambassadors, signing off.